much. Happiness is perpetually fleeting, so try to savor the next few minutes before it disappears once again. This is the Onion Week in Review. FBI officials announced they just can't bring themselves to bust a man who recently downloaded every season of the 1990s television show Picket Fences from a BitTorrent website. While stressing that pirating copyrighted material is strictly illegal, federal authorities expressed their sympathy for the man and claimed that perhaps the story of Sheriff Jimmy Brock and the strange events in a small Wisconsin town is all he has left to cling to.
We have more than enough evidence to bust him for piracy, but if the poor guy really wants to watch all 4 seasons of a 20-year-old CBS drama that nobody remembers, he's clearly going through a pretty big rough patch right now. Frankly, we don't need to make it any worse.
For statistical purposes, we have seized all private data from your personal computer, and we are disgusted with your recent internet search history. You sick For more, keep checking theonion.com.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Hey, what's up, all of our liberty-loving friends? This is another fantastic episode of Liberty at Night with Nate and Charlie on the Free Talk Live network. Although Charlie, the co-host, is not going to be here for pretty much this entire show. He's traveling, and he is very sorry about that. Remember, you can go find our podcast with over 1,200 episodes. That's called Good Morning Liberty. You can find that on your favorite podcast app. So I just got back early this morning from the Libertarian National Convention. I am tired for sure. Didn't go to bed till 4:30 or so, and just kind of been doing a little research today and keeping up with stuff online and really not doing much of anything today. So we're going to talk a lot about the Libertarian Convention, of course, because I just spent the entirety of the convention watching all of the things that were going on and listening to the speeches and talking to people and conducting interviews and all sorts of stuff like that. The Libertarian Party did pick its presidential and vice presidential nominees. The presidential nominee is Chase Oliver from Georgia, and then vice presidential nominee is Mike Termott, who I've done 4 or 5 interviews with now. And just between you and me, I do happen to like Mike Termott a lot. He's had the right answers to every question that I have thought to ask him when I was interviewing him. And that's the extent of my knowledge, but he seems like a pretty cool guy to me. So let's talk a little bit about this convention. I have described it several times as a show to many people, and in fact, it kind of was. Although I will tell you, I don't go to a lot of actual political party conventions. The thing that's different about the Libertarian Party's convention is that they don't do their business until the convention is going on. Like Republican and Democrat Party, they get all of their business done, and then they have this forward-facing, front-facing, unified-facing front when they actually have the convention and do the speeches and stuff like that. During the Libertarian Party convention, they're actually voting on all sorts of different party things and bylaws and all this crap that I don't care a lot about, but apparently there's a lot of people in the party that care about these things. The other thing that happened was the Mises Caucus did get a little win in keeping Angela McArdle as the chair, but of course their preferred endorsed candidate, Dr. Michael Rectenwald, did not win the nomination for president. So there was still, oddly enough, that majority vote for Angela McArdle, but then their preferred presidential candidate didn't win. So let's talk about a few things that happened. I guess the first thing is I want to give you a little bit of an overview of kind of some of the things that I saw while I was there. And it's things like this clip right here of people grabbing the microphone and saying some ridiculous things. This was not the entire convention, but things like this, kind of caused me to laugh a whole bunch, talk about how crazy this was, and then leave the room and try to not hang out there anymore. But some things that sounded like this, earmuffs.
I'd like to propose that we go tell Donald Trump to go f*** himself.
Hear, hear!
Yes!
Standing ovation for that. libertarians. We do not need to give that time to non-libertarians.
This is not a GOP cuckolding convention.
I move to vacate the chair.
Wow.
So, a lot of things like this going on at the convention. You know, people are animated and they care a lot, and they got their time at the microphone and they did things like that. There was also a really big applause when they announced that Angela McArdle won her re-election as the chair, too. The crowd was very loud and in applause and support for her, and not a lot of booing going on and all that. But there was also a loud applause when that person put up the motion to vacate the chair. Listen, I'm not the guy that you go to tell you about all of the Libertarian Party infighting. I see it split between left-leaning libertarians and right-leaning libertarians. And I really hate the divide in the party. I don't know if there is a way to ever fix the actual divide in the party, because they seem to be divided on very fundamental issues, and so neither side wants to compromise. They do have a lot of libertarian values, and so they are people that don't compromise on these fundamental issues. And so I'm not sure if this is something that's going to get fixed. I just don't like the idea of spending so much time fighting over the internal workings of the party. I would like to have a convention where they were fighting over what the best way to get out the vote was, or these new organizations that they could help to door knock and the phone bank and to do things like this, like ways that they can actually expand the party. And instead we kind of vote on these internal issues and spend a bunch of time fighting over these internal issues. And that's really unfortunate if you ask me. So RFK Jr. and Donald Trump spoke. Vivek also spoke, along with a lot of other people. Mike Lee, Senator Mike Lee also spoke. And then Ron Paul gave a speech on Sunday as well. And that was really cool to see. I think that's the third time that I've seen him speak now. And so the Vivek speech had a lot of boos, a lot of heckling. Vivek handled it pretty well. He's a guy that can handle heckling at crowds. RFK, I would say way less heckling and booing. His speech was definitely written to pander in a really great way to libertarians. He basically went through the Bill of Rights and explained what his position was on each one of these, and that he was the best candidate to protect each one of these amendments. And so I actually think that he did the best job talking to the libertarians that were there, and he seemed to get the least amount of heckling out of all of the candidates. And then there was Trump's speech. And so I'm one of the guys that I do think that having Trump come to the convention and speak was a good idea, clearly, for marketing. There were a couple hundred media people there, media credentials issued at this, 200 or 300, I think. The line just to get into the Trump speech, just for media, was extremely long. And you go out into the media right now and you search Libertarian Convention or Libertarian and Trump, and you just see pieces written in every single major outlet about this. And I don't think that that's something that would have happened if they would not have had people like Trump and RFK and Vivek there speaking to the crowd. If it were just a bunch of libertarians that were there preaching to their choir, I don't know if you would have had C-SPAN covering the entire thing. You know, C-SPAN broadcast the convention for like 12 hours yesterday. And so I do think that as far as that goes, it was a good idea. And it's up to libertarians to decide whether or not they're going to vote for any of these candidates. It's also up to the libertarian candidates to make sure they keep those votes, to make sure that they win those votes. It's a free market of ideas. And so I'm not afraid of libertarians hearing other people speak. They hear these other people speak all the time. I think this was clearly a ploy to try and get some media attention. And as far as that goes, they were able to do that. Now, oddly enough, it was the Mises Caucus side that decided to bring Trump and RFK and all these people to the convention. And now all these major news outlets are running stories about how the Libertarians denied Trump and RFK their nominations because they both seek the Libertarian nomination for president. That was part of Trump's speech that we'll talk about here in a second. And so the stories go like, Libertarians deny Trump and RFK the nomination and instead go with one of their own, Chase Oliver. And so now you have many major news publications writing about this, and now they're writing about Chase Oliver. Whereas it's kind of weird. I don't think if Trump and RFK and these other people were there, that Chase Oliver would be getting all of the media attention that he is getting right now. And so I hope that he realizes that, and I hope that a lot of the left-leaning libertarians realize that this idea to bring these people here is actually going to end up helping Chase Oliver. So the big thing, I'll go with the good news with Trump's speech, which all of you already know, but I'll tell you my thoughts on this. Trump did promise that he would commute the sentence of Ross Ulbricht, who's been in prison for 11 years now. He's the creator of Silk Road, which is a place where you could buy and sell things. And people bought and sold things on that website. Sometimes they bought and sold things that were illegal for people to buy and sell. And so they basically took every single one of those instances for what happened, and they gave Ross Ulbricht 2 life sentences plus 40 years for creating a website where other people did things that were against the law. It would be like putting the contractor who built the road in prison for 2 life sentences for all the people that used the road to go and do things that were illegal. And this website was called Silk Road. That's one of the ideas there. So Trump promises that he is going to commute the sentence. This was also one of the strategies. In fact, weeks ago or month ago, whenever it was that this was announced, it was the very first thing that I was told when one of my buddies in the Libertarian Party on the Mises Caucus side called me. He said, just so you know, the deal that we were trying to work out now is that he is going to come and speak at the convention, and in exchange for that, he is going to pardon one of these people that people are asking for pardons for all the time. Now, at this time, I was told that it was going to be Julian Assange, that they were going to drop charges against him. I didn't hear Ross Ulbricht mentioned at that time. And it ended up not being Assange or Snowden. It ended up being Ross Ulbricht. I think that he is a guy that deserves to have his sentence commuted. And I think this is a good thing. Here's what that sounded like.
On day 1, I will commute the sentence of Ross Ulbricht to a sentence of time served.
So the crowd was obviously really happy about that. It was kind of funny. He did this late in the speech, and up until that point, he had been getting heckled and booed to the point where you could barely hear him in the actual room because the sound at the Washington Hilton in that ballroom, the Columbia Ballroom in that hotel, was absolutely terrible, and you could hardly hear him speaking. And so people were heckling so much that it was actually hard to actually hear him inside the room, which made it really awkward for me because I've done a lot of sound in the past, and I'm kind of a sound guy at heart when I go to places, and it just made it for a really awkward experience for me. He waited until late in the speech to make this announcement, and after he made that announcement, most of the heckling stopped. So he probably, maybe in hindsight, would go back and say, well, I could have said that in my first paragraph, and maybe these people wouldn't have heckled me the entire time. I don't know. That's on him. And by the way, his speech was absolutely ridiculous. It was completely ridiculous. He is very out of touch with libertarianism. I'm not entirely sure he knows what libertarianism is whatsoever. He promised to put a libertarian in his cabinet. Okay, that sounds great. Wouldn't it be great to have a libertarian in his cabinet? It would. That would be a great thing for sure. Does he know what a libertarian is at all? I'm not sure, because his speech was actually just him reading through an article that he found on The Spectator, or one of his, I guess his speechwriter, one of his people found on The Spectator, about why the Libertarian Party should embrace Trump. And so this guy named D. Roy Murdoch wrote this article about why libertarians should embrace Trump. And Trump presented him to the audience as one of the great libertarian thinkers out there in the world, a tremendous libertarian, a great, very libertarian guy. And he just bent over backwards to talk about how this guy was a great libertarian. I don't know the dude personally, but I did go through all the articles that he's written, and I found exactly one where he talks about libertarianism, and it's the one where he says that libertarians should back Trump. So I don't think the dude is a libertarian whatsoever. So when he tells me that he's going to put a libertarian in his cabinet, what does that mean? That's a big question. I have no clue, and I don't think he does either. But if you did actually do it and the person was fairly libertarian, well, that would be a pretty great thing. Even if he put Rand Paul in his cabinet, I would accept that as a libertarian that he is putting in his cabinet. That would be fine. As far as whether or not he is actually going to commute the sentence of Ross Ulbricht, a lot of the response to the post that we put online has been, why do you trust Trump that he would do this? The answer is, I do not. I don't trust Trump that he would do this. But right now, this is the greatest chance that Ross has ever had to get out of prison. This is the closest that he has ever come to getting out of prison right now. And the front runner, I think still the current, I haven't looked at recent polls, but say the front runner for the next president of the United States just told a room full of people and every single news outlet and millions of people on Twitter and everyone else who has seen all the articles that on day one, he was going to commute the sentence of Ross Ulbricht. I think that the fact that he is on record, on video, saying that he is going to do that means that it is much more likely that that is going to happen than if the Libertarian Party did not bring him there to make that speech and he never found out who Ross Ulbricht was, and Ross still just kept writing letters and his street team and all his supporters, kept filing petitions and filling out petitions and stuff like that. So, yeah, I don't trust him at all. I just think that there is a much higher likelihood now, and it is the highest likelihood that there has ever been, and therefore that is a good thing. And yeah, like I said online, if this actually happens, this will be the single most monumental thing that the Libertarian Party has ever done. Because up to this moment, they have effected almost and exactly zero change in American government, except for having some libertarians in office that maybe have changed a couple things, if you count the Republicans that have made some change, like the Pauls. And I don't know if Massey's actually been able to change anything yet with a bunch of no votes. And I don't know if Ron Paul was actually able to change anything in government. Actually, I don't know if Rand Paul has been able to change anything in government other than stopping Trump from going to war with Iran. But anyhow, if they actually get a guy out of prison that was going to die in prison, then allowing Trump to come there and speak for 40 minutes is completely worth it. And everyone just needs to get over that fact. It's bigger than you, and it's bigger than the Libertarian Party even. This would be the biggest thing that they've ever done. And so quit your freaking complaining about this, having Trump come and speak. All right? It is up to libertarians to decide if they are going to listen to the things that he's saying. If these people actually listen to the words that Trump was saying, and they're like, oh my God, I love this Trump guy. He's great. He's such a libertarian. He's so much better than the Libertarian Party, and I want to go vote for him, then that's on them. Then you haven't done a good enough job keeping libertarian votes. Okay? That's on you. That's a free market of ideas. This was clearly a good idea. And if Trump wins, it's going to have a life-changing outcome for someone. And if that's all we get out of this entire cycle, I think that it was worth it, because it's not like the Libertarian Party was going to win anyway. Everyone knows that. It's going to be either frickin' Trump or frickin' Joe Biden. Those are the only options out of who's going to win. Okay, so if we at least get one win out of this thing, then it's completely worth it. All right, next thing on the list. I did want to, I don't like it when people make stuff up. All right, and the Biden-Harris campaign headquarter official Twitter account, I think it just means that they have no idea what libertarians do, what libertarians think. They've never been to a libertarian event before, of course, even though they were invited to come to this one along with the other candidates and declined, most likely just ignored that invitation, okay? And so they post out that Trump's speech got drowned out by chants of hypocrite while he was speaking. Now, first off, is Trump a hypocrite? Yes, Trump is a hypocrite. I'm not pointing this out because I want to defend Donald Trump and say that he is not a hypocrite whatsoever. But I don't like it when people say dumb stuff. And I don't like it when people take the words that libertarians are saying and then say that they're saying something else at all. And then when I go through the comments on this, it's completely ridiculous, of course. And then some libertarians try to get on there and tell them what they were chanting. And of course, they just get made fun of in those comments, say that they're coping and all of those things. Here's the chant right here. Here's the chants of hypocrites for Donald Trump. Okay. Now, as libertarians, the people listening to me right now in this group, what were they chanting? You let me know. Yeah, in the Fed. That is what they're chanting. So, I can forgive you for thinking that they were chanting hypocrite, of course, if you've never been to a libertarian event before. But there's this guy named Ron Paul. And this guy named Ron Paul had a book called In the Fed. And when Ron Paul was running his presidential campaigns, he got so many people excited about ending the Fed that every time this guy would come out and speak, they would chant in the Fed. And in fact, throughout the entire week of this libertarian convention, during all sorts of speeches that were going on, the libertarian crowd would erupt in chants of in the Fed. Now, remember what the one of Trump speaking sounded like? And then here's the video that I took of Ron Paul coming out on stage yesterday. All right, so you could say that the entire crowd that was cheering and clapping for Ron Paul was also calling him a hypocrite at the same time. Or you could assume that they are chanting in the Fed in the way that they have been chanting for Ron Paul and for other candidates as long as I can remember and as long as I've been around the party. That's exactly what they were doing. They were chanting in the Fed. I'm surprised the community notes not on this right now. I have rated all the proposed community notes on this Biden-Harris post, and we're not quite there yet. So let's see, what else do we have? Trump did do something at the convention, by the way, that I found to be pretty surprising, honestly, which is, I didn't expect it, but he did actually come out and just ask for the Libertarian Party nomination. I did not expect that whatsoever. Here in just a couple minutes, we're going to go through some of his speech, and I'll show you what that sounded like. The libertarians at the convention did not like this idea whatsoever, so we'll start back with his speech.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, Dash was the first crypto project to have a decentralized autonomous organization that to this day continues to improve and promote Dash. Every month, 10% of the mining rewards go into a treasury. Anyone with one Dash to spend can put forward a proposal to the Dash masternodes. The masternodes vet the proposals and decide which ones move forward and are funded by that treasury. Nowadays, DAOs are plentiful, but Dash paved the way by doing it first, nearly a decade ago. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol, and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit dash.org to learn about Dash, dash.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. The defense and prosecution have been wrapping up their closing arguments in Donald Trump's hush money trial. The former president's attorney, Todd Blanche, said the prosecution's star witness, Michael Cohen, told lies, pure and simple. Cohen alleged he made hush money payments on Trump's orders to an adult film star to cover up an affair. FSN's Sally Patterson is outside the courthouse where the trial is taking place in Manhattan.
What we've been hearing from the defense so far is a very strong denial that Donald Trump, the former president of the United States, has done anything wrong. When he took to the floor earlier on Tuesday, we heard very strong words indeed from Trump's lawyer, Todd Blanche, and he said Donald Trump is innocent. He said that really everything that the prosecution has put on the table so far is a form of election interference. Now, of particular note was Michael Cohen's testimony. He's a key witness in this case. His testimony took place over several days in this trial. And what Trump's team has really been trying to do is undermine that testimony.
Around 24 people have died in extreme weather events across the United States. Hail, tornadoes and high winds have devastated large areas of Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas and Kentucky. 200 people have reportedly been killed following an airstrike on Rafah over the weekend. Those are the updated figures from the UN's aid agency, UNRWA. The UN Secretary-General has condemned in the strongest terms the attack, saying he's heartbroken by the images of the killed and injured. FSN's Jody Jacobs reports from UN headquarters in New York.
Antonio Guterres says the fighting in Gaza must stop immediately. In a statement released on Tuesday, the Secretary-General says recent orders of the International Court of Justice are binding and must be complied with. The UN's aid agency, UNRWA, says the situation on the ground following Sunday's attack is extremely devastating, with its head Philip Lazzarini describing it as an endless horror show.
Meanwhile, a temporary pier constructed by the US military off the coast of Gaza to deliver humanitarian aid has broken apart as a result of poor weather conditions. FSN's Ira Spitzer reports.
American officials said a part of the floating pier had broken off, making it temporarily unusable. It comes barely a week after the $320 million project began operating. Before that, heavy seas had delayed the launch of the pier for several weeks. Last week, the U.S. said the pier had already been used to deliver 820 metric tons of food and other supplies to a beach in Gaza to then be distributed by the United Nations. There's been no update on when the pier may become operational again.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Think of this. First time in U.S. history that a presidential candidate of a rival party will address the convention of a party that is presumably gathering to nominate its own candidate. Now I think you should nominate me or at least vote for me, and we should win together. You heard those words. Nominate me or vote. Vote for me. Because the libertarians want to vote for me, and most of them will. And it's very important. Because we have to get rid of the worst president in history. And together we will. And without it, there's a risk that we could have 4 more years. We won't have a country left. So what is the purpose of the Libertarian Party getting 3%? What is the reason to take a chance of having this horrible president destroy our country, which he will do in far less than 4 years? It's not going to take 4 years. That is why I'm committing to you tonight that I will put a libertarian in my cabinet and also libertarians in senior posts. Pretty good. That's pretty big. Or you can keep going the way you have for the last long decades and get you 3% and meet again, get another 3%. No, you want to make yourself winners. It's time to be winners. You have a lot of common sense. It's time to be a winner. Think of this.
I mean, I was in there and I was just laughing at that point. I thought that was pretty funny, honestly. I was just laughing. He's out there. He literally came in front of the crowd at the Libertarian Convention and asked for their nomination or for their votes, which is ballsy, first off. And then he said, or you can just keep getting your 3%. Then you meet again and you get your 3%. I'm sorry, that's funny. Whatever you think about the guy, or however much you hope the Libertarian Party gets more, he's right about that. He's right about that fact, and the Libertarians should take some responsibility there and say, yeah, we've been a party for 50 plus years, and most we've ever gotten is 3%. We need to figure out what the heck is going on right now. Unfortunately, the Libertarian Party is made up of a bunch of people who hate central authority, hate to collectivize anything, are very individual. They really care about individuality and all of those things. And so I think that is inherently always going to be a problem with the Libertarian Party. And anytime someone gets in power in the party, there's a person in power. Oh, that's not good. Can't trust that person. We need to get rid of that person. And then there's a person in power. And it was like, oh, no, that's not good. We can't do that. And so they never make it past that point because there's always someone just above them in power. And so they just focus on that person, so they think they can keep going to the higher levels, and it never actually works because they just keep infighting the entire time. Now, as far as what the crowd sounded like right here, I did want to point out that I'm not in support of heckling someone while they are speaking. Heckling is different from booing during the breaks in someone's speech for, typically where you would have an applause. Dave Smith did a good job talking about this. You can go to his page and, watch his video where he gave a couple minutes beforehand telling people not to be leftist sissies about this whole thing. I think that being respectful doesn't mean that you don't boo or whatever when other people are applauding. But I do think when you invite someone to come speak that you should let them speak without trying to talk over them or shout them down or just heckling them consistently throughout the entire thing. There are other people there who might actually want to hear him talk. The sound was terrible in that room. And so if you weren't right next to a speaker, you could barely hear what he was saying. And it just made for a really unprofessional environment. It made for a very immature environment. And it did sound like libertarians can't handle someone talking with whom they disagree. And I don't like that at all. We should be able to listen to the person talk and either don't applause or boo when other people are clapping. But you should let them speak when it's their turn to speak. I think that is what free speech is. Okay, you're not up on the stage. No one's here to hear you, or they would have asked you to come and talk, and they didn't. So just accept that fact also. Okay. I did think this is kind of funny. RFK posted, what an unexpected honor to wake up this morning to a groundswell in the Libertarian Party seeking to nominate me. I would have accepted the nomination if offered because independents and third parties need to unite right now to reclaim our country from the corrupt two-party system. It was the high point of my campaign to speak at the LP National Convention on Friday about our shared and urgent concerns. And I just wanted to point out that the groundswell was that Robert F. Kennedy did accept a nomination. He went through one of the ballot counts and he got a total of 19 votes. And so not like he came there and got a ton of votes. I will, however, contrast that with Trump, who got 6 votes in that exact same round of voting. So it does seem like more of the libertarians were liking RFK than they were liking Trump. Let's see. Let's get to Chase Oliver, the presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party. I've had Chase on the show before. I think he's a nice guy. Okay, I do. He seems like a good dude. He also put in a ton of work towards this campaign. He campaigned in all 50 states. He got a lot of volunteers. He had a big showing here at the convention, tons of people wearing his shirts, tons of signs. He was doing the groundwork the entire time at the convention. He worked really hard to get to this point, and he beat out the other candidates. And as far as I know, as far as I can tell, he beat them out fair and square. And so if you don't like the outcome, well, we'll talk about that when I finish up this conversation. I'm going to start this conversation about Chase by saying I really like his vice presidential nominee until I find, if I see some other stuff on this platform that I've never asked him about, then I'm always willing to change that. But I did go through his whole platform on his website, and I have talked to him 5 times now. That's Mike Termont. Seems to be a really good guy, very libertarian guy, and has had great answers every time that I asked him a question when he was on the show, and had, in-person, non-official conversations with him as well. So I'm in the position again where I like the vice presidential nominee and not the presidential nominee. So last time around in 2020, I still voted for Jo Jorgensen and Spike Cohen. And I felt okay about that. One, I really like Spike Cohen a lot. And 2, Jo Jorgensen didn't violate any of these fundamental principles of libertarianism. Now, of course, there was the messaging thing in 2020, but as far as what she said the government should do, she had the right answers to those questions. In 2016, Gary Johnson, I could not vote for him because I had a fundamental disagreement. I think that his belief that a baker should be forced by the government to bake the cake or get fined or go out of business or whatever it is that would happen, get sued or whatever, that went against the fundamental libertarian principles. In 2020, I didn't think that. That's why I was able to vote for Jo Jorgensen. This time, with Chase Oliver on the ticket, unfortunately, he's got something that I believe goes against a fundamental libertarian principle, and I will not be able to vote for this ticket unless he sincerely changes his stance on these things, which he's probably not going to. But he can, and people can change, and they can actually change, or they could just be electioneering and saying that they're changing, and you got to try and judge for yourself whether or not that's what's happening. So, I'm not going to be voting for him. That's what I want to tell you. But I am going to be not voting for him honestly, not based on anything that anyone is making up, and not based on the fact solely that he is gay. He is openly gay. He is 38 years old. I think he's going to be the first openly gay presidential candidate, like for a major party that's going to be on all the ballots and all that. I don't know, whatever those taglines are. I don't give two about that whatsoever. As long as he's not hurting people and taking their stuff, okay? I think you live your own life the way that you see fit. But I'm also gonna call people out when they just say things that don't make any sense about this, when they criticize things that had nothing to do with libertarianism, or when they just make things up. I'm gonna start off with, this is the kind of thing that I'm gonna be looking for. Because Chase and I happen to have the same opinion on something that even some of the people in our private Discord group have disagreed with us on. But even then, I don't want things to be misrepresented. Like Tim Pool, who posted, the LP just nominated a pro-vaccine mandate candidate. Okay? So here's this post. Let me find this post. My bad. So in this post, Chase Oliver was talking about how Democrats were wanting to force people to get the vaccine. And he called out Democrats for being pro-choice until it came to the vaccine. And then someone commented back to him about that. And Chase comments back and says, give me autonomy and property rights. You mean a business can decide to require workers to be vaccinated or limit customers to those with the vaccine. I need to pull up the entire tweet. I had it pulled up earlier. But basically, Chase said that businesses could require people, their own decisions, not forced by the government, that a business could require people to be vaccinated to do business with them. In my opinion, that is him coming out strongly in favor of property rights. I agree with him on this issue. And saying that a business can set whatever requirement they want to set for their customers, in this case a vaccine, is not the same thing as saying that you are pro-vaccine mandate. Those are very different things. You can accept the fact that a business has the right to set that restriction on who they're going to do business with, and you can not like it at the same time. I know that because that's how I felt during this time. I thought people requiring their customers to be vaccinated was ridiculous, but I supported their right to do it. That does not make me pro-vaccine mandate. That makes me pro-private property rights. And those are very different things. So things like this from Tim Pool, those are things I'm going to be looking out for. Now, one critique of him I've seen is what people call virtue signaling during the pandemic. Okay, he's the guy that talked about wearing masks. He posted several photos wearing masks, talked about how masking was important and keeping space between people when he had his Thanksgiving dinner. For instance, he responds to this guy who said the CDC director says the biggest coronavirus threat right now is not big gatherings in public, but small family gatherings where people take off their masks and the virus spreads. Chase responds, says, I'm having Thanksgiving of less than 10 people and we will be masked inside. And when we eat, since masks have to come off, we have spacing happening. It's not impossible to be responsible. Limit the size, wear a mask when not eating, space yourself accordingly. So I'm a guy who did not agree with the wearing of masks. But if people want to wear masks, then that's completely fine. If you want to do something that has basically no science backing it, in fact, a hell of a lot of science that says it was actually a bad thing, then go right ahead. What's important to me is whether or not the government should require people to do this. So far, I have not seen anything where Chase supported the government requiring people to do this. He talks about being responsible. All right, those are very different things, and we can disagree with his thoughts or where he was on the science of being safe and responsible during the pandemic. Some people got it wrong. Some people got it right. Some people are still wrong. And some people have been right the entire time. You know who I'm talking about. But if you're not saying that the government should require people to do this, then I kind of don't care. Because that's what's most important to a libertarian candidate, to me. Or about a libertarian candidate to me. No, I don't like the fact that he's a guy that would either not go into the science to see about whether or not masks were a good idea, or that he's a guy who did go through it and still came away with these conclusions on the whole subject. But as long as he's not going to force that on me, then I don't really care, okay? He also got the vaccine. I've seen a lot of people posting about this. Well, guess what? The co-host of this podcast also got the vaccine. All right. If Charlie Thompson ran for president one day, would you not vote for him because he went and got the vaccine during COVID? No. Maybe you wouldn't. Maybe you wouldn't. But Charlie's one of the most libertarian guys that I know. And Charlie wanted to go out of town for a really stupid reason. Okay, but he wanted to go out of town. And he had to get the vaccine to go and do that. All right. Now, if someday he runs for president or runs for office and people are saying, don't vote for this dude, he was virtue signaling or doing stupid stuff during COVID or whatever, or there's a picture of Charlie wearing a mask or something like that, I would know. Personally, I would know, and a lot of you guys who listen to this show would know, well, okay, well, he did those things, but I know Charlie. I've been listening to him for 1,000 episodes, and he's a super libertarian guy. And his best friend of 20 years says he's also a super libertarian guy. So not a great way to judge people is what I'm saying, okay? He has another post where he's talking about meeting voters being important. This was during his Senate campaign in Georgia, I guess. So he's doing it safely, of course. Mask, hand sanitizer, a UV pen cleaner. We're all here. Okay. So in our opinion, probably everyone listening right now, he went too far with the COVID stuff. I don't like it. I don't like it. Okay. If he promises that he would never force anything like that on individuals, then I kind of don't care. Now, listen, I'm going through all these things and I'm saying I'm still not voting for the guy. But I don't want to see critiques. This is my show. It's half my show. And so clearly I'm giving my opinions here. That's why we're all here listening right now. I don't want to see critiques that I think that have nothing to do with what's important for a libertarian president and the way that they would govern if they were in that office. Okay? I get that you don't like the people would do that personally. So I'm going to go through all these things that a lot of you people are probably going to agree with real quick. And I'm doing it because I think it's fair. And I'm doing it because I'm probably also going to critique Chase a whole hell of a lot up until the election. And I also think it's important to be really fair and get all of the information out there to people. So people like us who are maybe on the right-leaning, Mises Caucus-leaning libertarian side, or the only libertarian side, whatever you want to call it. So we don't go out there online and say a bunch of stupid things, and then people say that we're just being homophobic or whatever it is that they're going to say, and that we're just making stuff up, and we never looked into any of his actual platforms or things that he said in the past. Okay, it's just so we have the full amount of information that any amount of critiquing that we do is actually truthful and it's rooted in things that he's actually said in his actual platforms as a presidential candidate, so we don't look like idiots. So when it comes to the military, he wants to close all the overseas bases and immediately return active duty personnel to domestic bases, end aid being directed to nation states currently at war. This includes Israel and Ukraine. He says we can offer moral support to our friends. He says that he says, I recognize that there are aggressors and victims in war. I would allow private parties, including defense contractors, to voluntarily contribute funds to these people, but not the federal government. He said, if asked to act as a mediator, I would more than happily allow America to act as a mediator, and that he would utilize trade as a bargaining chip to foment peace with our neighbors. He says he would immediately abolish the death penalty for all federal crimes. So you really can't do it for the state crimes. Here's one thing that I do have a question on. So something that I would probably disagree with here. He says I would have prosecutorial officials, federal prosecutorial officials, look at alternatives to life without parole. So a life sentence where you never have a chance of getting out. He wants alternatives to that, like where someone can be rehabilitated and can truly re-enter society, even for a crime such as murder. So I'm against the death penalty. I'm totally fine with abolishing the death penalty. I have to think a little bit on this whole getting rid of life without parole for someone that murdered someone. Now, one of the main reasons I'm against the death penalty is because I don't trust the government. I don't trust their prosecutors. I don't trust their investigators. I don't trust them to put together evidence of a crime and an argument that someone should be killed by the state. I wonder if I take that to its logical conclusion, that I also don't trust them to decide that someone would have to spend life behind bars without the possibility of parole and have their whole life taken away from them in that way, and that they would still have the same chances of being wrong or of intentionally being wrong as they did with the death penalty. I think that that's a valid thing to think about. But if you know beyond the shadow, I don't know how you truly prove beyond a shadow of doubt, because I don't trust confessions. We're getting to a point where you can't trust videos. I don't trust witnesses. I don't trust DNA evidence anymore either. So how do you ever actually know beyond the shadow of a doubt? I don't know. Okay, we won't spend too much time on that whole thing. I'll have to think more on it, but my initial reaction is to disagree with that idea. In qualified immunity for federal law enforcement, so you guys know the thing. In mandatory minimum sentencing for all those things. In the prosecution of victimless crimes, we know all that. His immigration thing, I've seen that he's an open borders guy. Maybe there's videos or something of him talking about this. I haven't found those yet. His actual platform on his website doesn't say that he's open borders. He talks about making it much easier for people to immigrate here. He actually says things that I have talked about before, where you need to do a medical and a criminal background check to assess their safety, and that's about it. And it needs to, and they need to be able to come in. Like I've literally said these same things on this podcast before. Okay, Let me see here. Okay, there's a tweet right there from that Magoo just posted from Chase Oliver saying the best way to export liberty is with an open border. Let money and people and goods move freely and let markets and people flourish. Border control in its current form is central planning that doesn't work. Again, he says hashtag abolish ICE. Thank you, Magoo. I appreciate that. Yeah, I hadn't gone. I've searched some other tweets that I did bring in here, but I hadn't looked at that yet. I'm not an open borders guy. I think there needs to at least be a fence and a process for people to go through so you can at least check and make sure that they're not on the run for murdering their entire family and that they're trying to come and hide out in the United States. Just do a criminal background check. Even if you got a terrorist database or whatever, a terrorist watch list, that's questionable because I don't know, maybe some of us are on a domestic terrorist watch list. I don't know. So how do you trust that list at all in the first place? But if you got a criminal database and someone's on the run, someone's wanted for murder, someone's running for an actual crime where there's a victim, something like that, check them out. Okay, that's all you got to do. But it doesn't need to take 10 years to become a citizen. It doesn't need to take a ton of time for you to actually get into the United States. That process does need to be streamlined. But I don't think a fully open border is a good idea whatsoever. Of course, decriminalizing cannabis, all of those things. Let me see, full pardons of persons who were convicted solely for nonviolent drug offenses, and urge every governor to do the same. Let's see, repeal of the Controlled Substances Act. Let's see, push for the passage of the Drug Policy Reform Act and encourage governors to follow suit with what they're doing because they're, of course, only talking about a federal level. So I think I talked about this earlier. No, we were talking before the show started. He is a pro-choice guy. So that's something where we're going to disagree. I do not know up to what point. So if he is fully pro-choice all the way up to the point of birth, I think that that's absolutely disgusting and actually is murder. And so we would have a very fundamental disagreement on that as well. There is absolutely no excuse for killing a viable baby. And you really can't make many moral excuses for killing a non-viable baby when all you got to do is stick it out for a couple months. And then you could have a freaking human being that might cure cancer or something like that. But absolutely no excuse for killing a viable baby at all. So if that's where he is on that, then we're going to have a very fundamental disagreement for sure.
After this morning's police raid on Cosmopolitan magazine's male pleasure laboratory revealed that test subjects were forced to endure horrific abuses and inhumane living conditions, Onion reporters spoke to 23-year-old Daniel Chertok, one of the numerous men exploited for the monthly magazine's studies on erotic stimulation.
It was awful. They drove us wild for days on end. Once they made me lather myself with gallons of sexy bath oils, and then read thousands of racy text messages until my eyesight began to blur. Then for the next 12 hours, they blasted sultry songs into my ears and made me simulate 50 crazy hot sex moves. They said I couldn't rest until they found the bliss button on my randy regions.
According to Chertok, test subjects were often subjected to hours of grueling experimentation at the hands of female scientists. Chertok added that many of his fellow subjects were not lucky enough to survive the excruciating treatment.
This is the Onion News Network.
So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
The latest episode of Free Talk Live continues with Hour 2 up next after the news here at listen.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. The defense and prosecution have been wrapping up their closing arguments in Donald Trump's hush money trial. The former president's attorney, Todd Blanche, said the prosecution's star witness, Michael Cohen, told lies, pure and simple. Cohen alleged he made hush money payments on Trump's orders to an adult film star to cover up an affair. So FSN's Sally Patterson is outside the courthouse where the trial is taking place in Manhattan.
What we've been hearing from the defense so far is a very strong denial that Donald Trump, the former president of the United States, has done anything wrong. When he took to the floor earlier on Tuesday, we heard very strong words indeed from Trump's lawyer, Todd Blanche, and he said Donald Trump is innocent. He said that really everything that the prosecution has put on the table so far is a form of election interference. Now, of particular note was Michael Cohen's testimony. He's a key witness in this case. His testimony took place over several days in this trial. And what Trump's team has really been trying to do is undermine that testimony.
Around 24 people have died in extreme weather events across the United States. Hail, tornadoes, and high winds have devastated large areas of Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Kentucky. 200 people have reportedly been killed following an airstrike on Rafah over the weekend. Those are the updated figures from the UN's aid agency, UNRWA. The UN Secretary-General has condemned in the strongest terms the attack, saying he's heartbroken by the images of the killed and injured. FSN's Jody Jacobs reports from UN headquarters in New York.
Antonio Guterres says the fighting in Gaza must stop immediately. In a statement released on Tuesday, the Secretary-General says recent orders of the International Court of Justice are binding and must be complied with. The UN's aid agency, UNRWA, says the situation on the ground following Sunday's attack is extremely devastating, with its head Philip Lazzarini describing it as an endless horror show.
Meanwhile, a temporary pier constructed by the US military off the coast of Gaza to deliver humanitarian aid has broken apart as a result of poor weather conditions. FSN's Ira Spitzer reports.
American officials said a part of the floating pier had broken off, making it temporarily unusable. It comes barely a week after the $320 million project began operating. Before that, heavy seas had delayed the launch of the pier for several weeks. Last week, the U.S. said the pier had already been used to deliver 820 metric tons of food and other supplies to a beach in Gaza to then be distributed by the United Nations. There's been no update on when the pier may become operational again.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks with an update today on South Africa's election. It takes place on Wednesday and sees the ruling African National Congress, the party of the late Nelson Mandela, under enormous political pressure and facing its first real political threat since the apartheid era ended. It is not clear that the ANC will secure more than 50% of the vote and win an outright parliamentary majority. Beleaguered by accusations of corruption and incompetence, it's being challenged by an array of opposition forces. Bob McMahon is with America's Council on Foreign Relations.
A lot of ANC watchers have seen a definite diminution of support. This is obviously the dominant post-apartheid party going back 30 years. But, just the violent crime issue, South Africa is up there with some of the worst countries in terms of deaths per 100,000 of population. But also there's a kind of a raggedness in the country that people have become accustomed to in terms of outages because electricity has become a real problem and all sorts of infrastructure problems. And so this hurts the ANC, but the ANC is still seen as likely going to squeak by. And that means another final term for current President Cyril Ramaphosa.
But he may need to go into some kind of coalition with at least one opposition party, an outcome Ramaphosa is hoping to avoid, but the electorate may have other plans. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the main news again, the defence and prosecution are laying out their closing arguments at Donald Trump's hush money trial. Around 24 people have died in extreme weather events across the United States. The UN says that 200 people were killed in airstrikes in Rafah over the weekend in Gaza. It comes as a temporary pier constructed by the US to deliver aid into Gaza has broken apart in poor weather conditions. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
George W. Bush may be retired from politics, but he's keeping busy with his new hobby of painting. Today, the Picasso-in-chief tweeted his latest picture, a turkey sandwich and glass of lemonade in front of the ghost of the Iraqi child that follows him everywhere. Rebecca Mira has been following the flourishing art career. He's pretty good, Rebecca.
Yeah, well, Rachel, Bush doesn't claim to be a great artist, but as he put it, not bad for an old man, huh?
Not bad at all. He says he likes painting simple things he sees in everyday life, like his dogs, that dead Iraqi child. You can see that Bush's art is improving over time if you take a look. At first, he could barely draw the Iraqi child's transparent hands, but now they look much more realistic.
Much more. You know, I'm not surprised that he's getting better. Bush practices constantly.
And Laura Bush says he's more focused than ever, locks himself away for hours at a time and won't talk to anyone while he's painting.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder if history will look back on Bush as a politician or the next Rembrandt. Up next, a study found that drinking red wine once a day can help the body get hammered.
This is the Onion News Network.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live.
What up, what up? It is Nate back here with Liberty at Night on Free Talk Live. I'm going to continue this conversation we were having about Libertarian presidential candidate Chase Oliver. In the last few minutes of this episode will be our most recent interview with him.
He wants to remove the federal government's involvement in education. He wants to abolish the Department of Education, so that's good. Let's see. He wants to end the federal backing of student loans. His answer for the student loan crisis is to get the government completely out of the business of student loans. Okay, he will not support any new gun restrictions and will look to repeal the restrictions that exist today. Okay, so he's very pro gun rights, of course. This is from isidewith.com, and I only brought in the ones where he gave a personal answer. Be careful with that isidewith website. Some of them would say Chase's voter base, and some of them would say personal answer. For example, I accidentally brought one in here that says Chase Oliver voter base. Okay, I want to know the one where it says personal answer. Okay, that's important. Should a business be able to deny service to a customer if the request conflicts with the owner's religious beliefs? Personal answer. Yes. Okay. He basically just answered the bake the cake argument. Gary Johnson said he should bake the cake. Chase Oliver, first openly gay presidential candidate, says you should be able to refuse service. Okay. I don't like the idea that it's because of religious beliefs. It should just be on the basis that this is your private property and you get to choose who you're going to do business with. But at least we know the answer on that question right there. Should immigrants be deported if they commit a serious crime? Yes. Personal answer. Yes. Okay. Should the government offer students a voucher that they can use to attend private schools? He says no. That was confusing to me, but later on the answer is the government should have no involvement in school whatsoever. So that's why he said no on that. Should the government require employees of a large business to be vaccinated from COVID? No. Was his answer. Should the government require children to be vaccinated for preventable diseases? Chase's answer is no. That's the vaccine schedule. Okay? So remember, when we talk about all the COVID stuff, we gotta no on even requiring children to get vaccinated for preventable diseases. So the other vaccine schedule that we have. Should hate speech be protected by the First Amendment? He says yes. Do you support charter schools? He said yes, our entire education system should be privatized. Let's see. Should convicted criminals have the right to vote? He says yes. I hope that means after you get out of prison, because clearly you don't have the same rights while you're in prison, or you wouldn't be locked in a cage. So I think that that's an important distinction to make. It doesn't say incarcerated individuals. It says convicted criminals. If you're a convicted criminal and you have been released from prison, that means that you are able to rejoin society, so you should be able to vote. Should the U.S. defend other NATO countries that maintain low military defense budgets relative to their GDP? He says no, and we should withdraw from NATO. So that's good. It's not like this guy's Josh Eckel or anything. Okay? I want to keep that in mind. I'm not going to vote for him because of this question right here. Should people under the age of 18 years old be able to receive gender transition treatments? His answer is yes, but only for non-surgical treatments such as puberty blockers and hormone therapy. All right, so he's not okay with the surgical stuff, but he's okay with the hormone therapy, puberty blockers, things like that. I can't vote for that. It's not going to happen. Children can't make that choice, and neither can their parents, unless this is something that is that. I mean, there are medically necessary reasons that children have to go on puberty blockers, and they have been for a long time. But a kid claiming that they are trans is not the answer. In fact, a question I've been asking myself lately is, if you think you're in the wrong body, why don't you take the hormones that correspond to your body? See if that helps you, feel better. I checked my testosterone, and it turned out it was like I was a 75-year-old man. So I had to go on some testosterone for a while. I don't know why. I was in the danger zone. I could have been talking about being trans, for all we know. But I grabbed myself right at the last minute. Never happened. I don't know if that's how it works, guys. I've just been wondering about that. Why go for the opposite sex hormones without trying the other? So when it comes to puberty blockers, I happen to believe that this is child abuse. I believe that everyone who is on the side of being pro-puberty blocker or being okay with this is going to go down in history as a group of people that ruined the lives of however many children that ended up taking these things, that they are going to be looked at and laughed at and talked about as barbarians who were following their emotions and their ideology and not following science. I don't think that people are informed enough. The kids are not informed enough about what their future is going to be. The parents are not informed enough about what the future is actually going to be with these things. It's not like you take this stuff and then you later in life you're actually the opposite sex. I'm sorry. That's just not the way that it works. That's not actually what happens. They talk about how these things save people's lives. They only follow them for 12 months, starting from the time that they start these therapies. They don't follow them later on in life. Seems like something that would be pretty important to do. But there are studies coming out to follow people later on in life, and it turns out that they're not saving as many lives as you might think. This is clearly child abuse, in my opinion, and in the opinion of a lot of other people. Okay? You're physically altering your kid's body, and you're changing the rest of their life in a very important way, all based on what? The feelings that a 7-year-old has? Can you imagine? I can't imagine taking something that a 7-year-old was saying that seriously, that you would actually decide to alter their lives. I honestly believe that a lot of what happens here is that they have activist parents. I know we've seen that plenty of times, where they have activist teachers that convince them of these things. Sometimes it's kids that maybe would have been gay, and so they're acting a little gay. And then they get told, well, that must mean that you're a girl. So we need to go on these, we need to block your puberty. I can't imagine support this. I think any parent that has ever done this is absolutely disgusting. And because that's the way I feel about this, I don't care about everything else that we just talked about as it pertains to Chase. I will not support this guy as a nominee of a party that carries the name of my ideology. Just won't do it. In fact, because of this thing, and also comments that he's made about kids going to drag queen story hour and stuff like that, I don't care about the pride parades and stuff and those things. I think drag queen story hour is super, super gross. And I think the pride parades where people are undressing or wearing, the ridiculous, basically undressed outfits in front of children, that those people have something wrong with them. And I don't mean that it's that they're gay or that they're trans. I think that there's something else going on there if you feel okay looking like that in front of a child. I'm sorry. That's the way that I feel. I don't hate these people. I don't hate Chase. I don't care what people do in their own private lives, but children are to be protected. And when parents don't protect their kids, when parents don't take care of their kids, right now the state comes in. Now the state still does a really terrible job of that. Look at the work that Spike Cohen is doing over there. You Are the Power. Look at the disgusting things that the state of Georgia is doing and putting parents in jail or taking away their kids for absolutely no reason at all, because they have a financial incentive to do it. Because when it's called abuse, they're able to get federal money. Okay? So the state already does a terrible job at this. But when the parents don't take care of their kids, or when the parents are hurting their kids, we say that kids should be protected. And right now in the society, the state comes in and takes care of this. Maybe in our ANCAP society, there'll be someone else who comes in and takes care of this, a private organization or something like that. Someone's got to have a use of force if you were going to take away kids. And these parents are hurting their kids. That's what's happening. And my libertarian president is a guy who knows that that's a really bad thing. And the kids are to be protected. And the kids don't know what the hell they're talking about. Ever. That's why they're kids. Okay? So anyhow, what now? On the screen, got the words, what now? I'm going to make this decision right now. And I'm still thinking about it. I was talking to a couple friends about this. You know, what I realize is that I care a lot about this party after going to the convention. Like I care what happens, and I care, and I want the Libertarian Party to do well. And it's probably not, it might not ever happen in my lifetime. And what I realized was I've got a lot of friends that are in the Mises Caucus. I got a lot of friends that are in the whatever caucus. CLC, Classical Liberal Caucus, or whatever. Today, I felt bad for one of my friends that I know has been working his ass off this whole time. He was trying to get Michael Rectenwald elected. I never liked him very much, but not that I disliked him. I just not charismatic, not a great speaker. Kind of comes off as a pretty weird dude to me. But, you know, we might agree on like every political point. Okay. But he never did it for me. I was never excited about Dr. Michael Rectenwald. I'm sorry. So anyhow, I got friends and I felt bad for him. You know, I was texting him and said, hey, you know, I'm sorry about the outcome. I know you wanted to go differently. I know you guys put in a ton of work. And then I knew that I was going to come on here and do a lot of complaining about the Libertarian Party and how I hate the nominee and all this stuff. And, started to feel bad that I didn't do anything to help. So the decision that I need to make, and that you guys, if you care about this stuff, that you also need to make is, are we going to keep waiting on other people to do this for us, or are we ever going to step in and help? That's the question. Talking about it from the outside, oh, wow, look at the Libertarian Party. The reason that this is weighing on me so much is that I see how few people can actually make a difference in the party, because the way that this works is the delegates from each state go to the convention and they vote and they elect on these issues. And so it's not like you're one out of the 500,000 actual registered libertarians, what the number is. You know, you're one out of the 800 delegates or whatever there are. So the decision that we need to make is, are we going to say, screw the Libertarian Party, this is never going to work, it's time to just work with the Republicans and try to change the Republican Party from the inside, or screw political parties because they're all stupid, but I'm going to continue complaining about everything all the time. I'm just telling you my inner dialogue right now. Elections are pointless, voting is dumb, but also I hate everything that's happening right now, and I wish it would change, sincerely wish it would change, but voting is dumb, and I'm never going to take part in any of this. So what choice do you make? I think what I'm going to start with is joining the Libertarian Party of Tennessee, and then we'll go on from there, because I'm in Tennessee, and that's the easiest thing to do, to hang out with those guys and try and figure out what we can do. And then I'll think about joining the Libertarian Party and maybe actually be able to get someone good elected next time around that we can agree with, that I can agree with. Because it's a really gross feeling. I'll tell you what sucks is, I've been talking about being a libertarian for a long time. And then when this candidate gets chosen, I had a friend who said the same thing. I'm a little bit embarrassed about it. I feel like I just came out at the same time as someone who thinks kids should be transed. You know, not because of the gay thing, because of the gender affirming care for kids thing. That's a very important issue. Okay. And so I'm a little bit embarrassed about this as a libertarian, for this to be attached to my name right now. So I think I either have to decide that I'm going to help change things, or I've got to decide that what am I going to do? Help change things in the Republican Party? Am I going to have a lot better success at doing that? Or just keep talking about things all the time and never go help the actual few amount of people that affect change within this party that we're all talking about right now. So what I found out is that a low amount of people can actually change a lot of things inside the party. And I actually care about what happens in the party. And so I'll join the Libertarian Party of Tennessee, and we'll see about national after that. So anyhow, that's what's happening right now. You guys almost got me. Tennessee got me. LP National is probably going to get me too. We'll talk a whole lot more about this stuff. We've been talking for an hour right now, plus the 15 minutes beforehand with the live group. Thanks so much to everyone who was hanging out. I really appreciate all of you. It's going to be a week where I'm going to be releasing a bunch of interviews that I did at the convention, and then I'm also going to be doing some episodes as well. And so it's going to be a lot of content coming your way this week. I got another interview on Wednesday to do Wednesday morning as well. So anyhow, thank you so much for being here. Subscribe if you're not already. If you're listening 1 hour and 2 minutes into the show, you're probably someone who has followed the show. Go find us on all of the YouTubes and the Rumbles and the Odysseys and all those things. And tell a friend, tell a family member. Go to GodHatesFeds.com. It's a popular shirt. Let me tell you what. I'm not going to tell you the funniest story about the God Hates Feds shirt, but I will tell you. You get that God Hates Feds shirt on and you walk around in a crowd of libertarians, you will be shaking hands, taking selfies, and talking to people all night. Because I walked around in a stupid suit for like a day and a half, and I talked to people who knew me from the show or that I had met before. I put on the God Hates Feds shirt. I couldn't walk 10 feet without fist bumping someone, taking a selfie, having someone tell me that they love my shirt, ask them where they could get it, or something like that. So if you want to stand out in a crowd, then go get your God Hates Feds shirt at GodHatesFeds.com.
Yeah, so libertarians broadly are different from the two-party system because our core root and our core thought of our philosophy is as long as you're not harming another person, that you should not have the force, fraud, or coercion of government put upon you. And I think that is something that absolutely separates our political philosophy from the kind of this kind of floating out there political philosophies of Republicans and Democrats, which change with the political winds. Libertarians are constant. You kind of know where a libertarian is going to fall on most issues. What I think makes me a great candidate for this particular election in 2024 and separates me is my messaging style has always been more positive, aspirational, empathic kind of libertarian messaging. I'm not super academic. I don't tell people to go read 500-page tomes. I like to talk about kitchen table libertarian issues.
And so what are some of the main issues that you're tackling?
So, of course, there's always the kitchen table issues of the economy and inflation. And I think that is something that you're not going to get a lot of difference from us libertarians. We want to balance. We want to cut the budget. We want to balance it. We want to stop printing money out of thin air. But then there's a lot of range of issues that I think are really particular to millennials and Gen Z voters. You know, we're the generation that had a hard time buying our first home because of the 2008 housing crisis, and Gen Z is now upcoming as new voters. So we need to start talking about those issues that are very important to those voters' values, because that's what's going to that's us planting the seeds for future harvest when they're the largest voting bloc in our country. I talk a lot about unleashing the power of the green economy by getting government out of the way and allowing innovators to actually create the products in a market. I think that speaks very well to the environmental concerns. I talk a lot about educational freedom, about allowing parents to choose the school for their own children, eliminating the Department of Education. But even more so, I actually have a detailed plan about how to get us out of the student loan crisis that does not increase the deficit or debt. It does not just give away loans to people who have taken out loans, and it gets government out of the business of the student loan business, so market principles can lower the cost of higher education for those students who are in college now or are going to be in college in the future.
It seems most voters are independent now. What is a strategy to bring them into the camp of either the Libertarian Party or at least voting for a third party, even as a snub to the duopoly?
Part of that is you're going to actually have to show proof of concept. You actually have to be out and doing stuff. You have to be active, because that's how you gain the trust of the voters. So if you're not actually getting on the streets, doing the grassroots effort of being an activist, they are never ever going to trust our party or our movement. And as a candidate, I want to lead the way and lead by example and say we're going to be out in the trenches, and that way when voters see us, they've seen us before. They say, hey, I know that Libertarian. He was in the room fighting against police militarization. I know that Libertarian. He was fighting for a more fair immigration system and to open up our borders so that people can come here and work. I think that when you're the Libertarian in the room, you gain their trust. And if you're the only Libertarian when you walk in the room, if you do it right, you're not the only Libertarian when you walk out of the room.
Now, when it comes to the Cop City thing, I wanted to ask, so Libertarians, obviously we don't want the militarization of the police. But also means, it doesn't mean that we support some of the protests or potential violence or anything that can happen. Now, I basically can't believe anything I've seen on social media, but if there has been violent protests because of this Cop City, do we support that as Libertarians, or we want to go about it with this ballot?
So I actually don't support violence as a means for social change. I think peaceful, nonviolent resistance is the quickest and most sure way to freedom. It requires a lot of work to be done. But when you create violence, particularly around law enforcement issues, you actually bolster your opponents, because they say, look at these people creating violence. We need more police. And so I think it's actually a net negative, and it's not something that I advocate for. But what I will say is, this facility, it deserves to be opposed, and it deserves to have Libertarian voices opposing it. But we don't have to agree with all the tactics that are out there. In fact, I speak out regularly against those tactics to say that they're counterproductive. And I want to be productive when we do this. So, no, violence is never the answer when it comes to doing this. But I did say in my public speaking, when people say, oh, we're aggressing against the police, we also have to remember at the same time, government aggresses against us every day. And so we have to take the high road and be peaceful, nonviolent resistors to break that chain and to break that cycle.
I want to know a little bit about you, like how you became a Libertarian, if you were always a Libertarian, or people love to give their Libertarian origin story, however that happened.
What was your rebirth?
Yeah, so my origin story is pretty straightforward. I got started in politics opposing wars, particularly the war in Iraq, because I had friends that I graduated high school with that were getting sent there. And so by default, I was like, well, George Bush is the president, so I must be a Democrat, and I'll oppose him. Even though I was a fair tax Democrat, I was a pro-gun Democrat, I was a balance the budget Democrat. Those used to be Democrat ideas, by the way.
That's like a hard right person right now.
And so as I was an anti-war activist, I fought to get Barack Obama elected because I thought he's better than this warmonger Hillary Clinton. And he says he's going to end the wars and close Gitmo and stop the drones. And he didn't do any of that, and then got a Nobel Peace Prize for it. And so I started trying to organize my anti-war friends, and I realized they weren't really anti-war, they were anti-Bush, and they used the war as an excuse. And so I became politically not involved for a little while until I found the Libertarian Party doing outreach at the Atlanta Gay Pride Festival. I just happened to be wandering around through there. I'm LGBT, so that's why I was there. But, I see the tent, and John Mons, our candidate for governor, literally waved me in the door. And, he started talking to me. I was like, I don't really know. He goes, well, what's your one biggest issue? I said, I oppose the war on terror, 100%. And he said, welcome home.
Don't worry about things you can't control. Isn't that what they always say? But it's about impossible to avoid worrying about what's going on these days. The government has used the war on guns, the war on drugs, and the war on terrorism to tear our Bill of Rights to shreds. But you can fight back. The 10th Amendment Center has proven it, racking up major victories. For example, when the U.S. government claimed authority in the NDAA to have the military kidnap and detain Americans without trial, the nullifiers got a law passed in California, declaring the state's refusal to ever participate in any such thing. Their latest project is offnow.org, nullifying the National Security Agency. They've already gotten model legislation introduced in California, Arizona, Oklahoma, Missouri, and Kansas, meant to limit the power of the NSA to spy on Americans in those states. We'd be fools to wait around for the U.S. Congress or courts to roll back Big Brother. Our best chance is nullification and interposition on the state level. Go to offnow.org, print out that model legislation, and get to work nullifying the NSA. The hero Edward Snowden has risked everything to give us this chance. Let's take it. Offnow.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. The defense and prosecution have been wrapping up their closing arguments in Donald Trump's hush money trial. The former president's attorney, Todd Blanche, said the prosecution's star witness Michael Cohen told lies, pure and simple. Cohen alleged he made hush money payments on Trump's orders to an adult film star to cover up an affair. FSN Sally Patterson is outside the courthouse where the trial is taking place in Manhattan.
What we've been hearing from the defense so far is a very strong denial that Donald Trump, the former president of the United States, has done anything wrong. When he took to the floor earlier on Tuesday, we heard very strong words indeed from Trump's lawyer, Todd Blanche, and he said Donald Trump is innocent. He said that really everything that the prosecution has put on the table so far is a form of election interference. Now, of particular note was Michael Cohen's testimony. He's a key witness in this case. His testimony took place over several days in this trial. And what Trump's team has really been trying to do is undermine that testimony.
Around 24 people have died in extreme weather events across the United States. Hail, tornadoes, and high winds have devastated large areas of Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Kentucky. 200 people have reportedly been killed following an airstrike on Rafah over the weekend. Those are the updated figures from the UN's aid agency, UNRWA. The UN Secretary-General has condemned in the strongest terms the attack, saying he's heartbroken by the images of the killed and injured. FSN's Jody Jacobs reports from UN headquarters in New York.
Antonio Guterres says the fighting in Gaza must stop immediately. In a statement released on Tuesday, the Secretary-General says recent orders of the International Court of Justice are binding and must be complied with. The UN's aid agency, UNRWA, says the situation on the ground following Sunday's attack is extremely devastating, with its head Philip Lazzarini describing it as an endless horror show.
Meanwhile, a temporary pier constructed by the US military off the coast of Gaza to deliver humanitarian aid has broken apart as a result of poor weather conditions. FSN's Zara Spitzer reports.
American officials said a part of the floating pier had broken off, making it temporarily unusable. It comes barely a week after the $320 million project began operating. Before that, heavy seas had delayed the launch of the pier for several weeks. Last week, the U.S. said the pier had already been used to deliver 820 metric tons of food and other supplies to a beach in Gaza to then be distributed by the United Nations. There's been no update on when the pier may become operational again.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Well, hey, what's up, all of our liberty-loving friends? This is another fantastic episode of Liberty at Night on the Free Talk Live Network, coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee. My name is Nate Thurston, and Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. With fees of less than a penny per transaction, Dash is made for spending. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol and in multi-crypto wallets. And thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month for this sponsorship. It's easy to get and use Dash. You can learn more at dash.org. That's dash.org. And before we get into Dumb Bleep of the Week, I want to tell everyone, you got to remember, we have our own show that we do every single day, not just these Tuesday night shows on Liberty at Night, called Liberty at Night on the Free Talk Live network. We also have a daily podcast called Good Morning Liberty, which you can find by putting BernieLies.com in your browser. That'll bring up all of our links. Or you could just search Good Morning Liberty on your favorite podcast app. We've got 1,250 episodes released to this day, I believe. And tons of videos online, YouTube, Odyssey, Rumble, all of those things. And then, of course, people who go to joingml.com and join the Fed Haters Club, well, they get to hang out live with us during the Dumb Bleep of the Week episodes, and then they get to vote at the end for the dumbest thing. Well, it is Dumb Bleep of the Week. That is the day of the week where we go through some of the dumbest things that happened in politics. The live group submits things. We get submissions on Twitter. I throw in some submissions as well. Today's list is a little bit shorter than normal, a little bit less expansive than normal, and that is because I'm trying to get out of here ASAP. So we're going to go through these 9 dumb things that occurred, and then the live group, the Fed Haters Club, joingml.com, is going to vote on what the dumbest thing is. Dumb Bleep number 1 goes to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who did a big think piece interview with the New York Times. And basically, he's upset. He is upset with America and the West and NATO, which he's not a member of, in general, because they are just not doing enough to help them. In fact, they are actually hindering them by not allowing them to attack mainland Russia. This piece says, with his army struggling to fend off fierce Russian advances all across the front, President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine urged the U.S. and Europe to do more to defend his nation. You know, the $170 billion or whatever, plus what all the other countries have done, that's just not quite enough. Dismissing fears of a nuclear escalation and proposing that NATO planes shoot down Russian missiles in Ukrainian airspace. He's basically calling for a no-fly zone over Ukraine and asking for the U.S. and NATO to shoot down Russian planes and missiles, basically to protect Ukrainian airspace. Now, he makes one point in this piece where he says, well, you're helping Israel defend itself against the people that are launching missiles at them, you know, so you help, and Iran was launching missiles at Israel. You helped out with that. Well, problem is, Russia is a lot bigger country with, I guess, a lot more powerful military. And yes, they do have a heck of a lot of nukes. Zelensky says, don't worry about those nukes. You guys shouldn't be worried about that. Okay. We need you guys to help us out. He said he had also appealed to senior U.S. officials to allow Ukraine to fire American missiles and other weaponry at military targets inside Russia, a tactic the United States continues to oppose. Obviously. Surprisingly, but obviously. The inability to do so, he insisted, gave Russia a huge advantage in cross-border warfare that is exploiting with assaults in Ukraine's northeast. He was most animated as he ticked off a checklist of actions he believed his allies could take to support Ukraine. He argued that NATO should shoot down Russian missiles in flight over Ukraine without planes crossing into Ukrainian airspace, saying that would be purely defensive tactic and pose no risk of direct combat with Russian forces, except for that would be us and kind of a direct hot war and engagement with Russia, which is not a good thing. He says, so my question is, what's the problem? Why can't we shoot them down? Is it defense? Yes. Is it an attack on Russia? No. Are you shooting down Russian planes and killing Russian pilots? No. Unless there's Russian planes and pilots that are about to drop missiles. That would be the next step, of course. So he said to shoot down what's in the sky over Ukraine and give us the weapons to use against Russian forces. We need to end this thing ASAP. All right, I put this as dumb bleep number 1 because this is pretty important. Russia does have a lot of nukes. I'm not trying to fearmonger on nuclear war. I think it would have to get really bad for it to come to that. And Russia would know that they use them, that we'd be likely to use them. And so there's always that kind of mutually guaranteed destruction, you know. But we need to end this war. There needs to be a compromise. We shouldn't have talked them out of compromise a long time ago. And one of the first comments I got from someone when I suggested this on Twitter was, not until Russia pulls back their forces. There's no compromise, no negotiation. I said, well, that's a very brave stance for you to take here on Twitter.
But in Ukraine, where they're losing hundreds of thousands of people and generations of people are dying, and they're literally drafting mentally handicapped people into their military, people with Down syndrome getting drafted into the military and sent to the front lines to die for Ukraine. I think maybe they're in a little bit different position, and we shouldn't risk a nuclear war and the death of everyone in Ukraine and multiple other locations, potentially, if this were to continue to spread, all because you just really, really care about the Donbass region. Like that, you're willing to die for it. Actually, you're not willing to die for it. You're willing to tweet about it on Twitter about how other people should die for it, but not you. Definitely not you. Okay. That's dumb bleep number one. As I said, we're going to move through these pretty quickly because I got to go watch whatever the heck is about to happen at the Libertarian Convention. I have no clue what it's going to be. Number two, I hate unions more than anything else in the world. I think that if socialism comes to America, and it comes in the form of unions. It's not the Marxist socialism that was envisioned, but I think that it is essentially the same thing. It's not full worker ownership of the corporations, but it is worker control of the corporations, except for it's actually the unions controlling the corporations. So, the U.S. labor unions say they've had enough of the Trump tax cuts and want them repealed. The unions joined dozens of progressive groups in sending a letter to congressional leaders that blasted the Trump cuts as unfairly designed. And this is going to be an argument that's based off of a lie. All right. The top U.S. labor unions are saying they've had enough of the Trump tax cuts. Unions, including the United Auto Workers, a bunch of other terrible unions. The Screen Actors Guild, they're very upset about this. The National Education Association joined dozens of progressive groups in sending a letter to the congressional leaders Tuesday that blasted the Trump tax cuts as unfairly designed and fiscally irresponsible. It's not the spending that is fiscally irresponsible. It's the fact that they're not stealing more money from people. Just keep that in the back of your mind. The Trump tax law, known as the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, that's the name of it. That's why it's known as that. Made massive and permanent cuts to corporate taxes and temporary cuts to individual and estate taxes that have largely benefited the wealthy and eroded tax revenues, they wrote to congressional leadership. Keep in mind that as they argue for this, if they were to repeal these tax cuts, everyone would get a tax hike after that, not just wealthy people. But because they have so ingrained themselves in this lie, this argument, this rationale that the tax cuts mostly benefited the wealthy, what they mean is by dollar amount. And that is, of course, obvious. The people who pay the most of the taxes and the most amount of money in taxes when they get it, even if everyone got the exact same tax cut, it would mostly benefit the wealthy. It would mostly benefit the people who pay a higher dollar amount in taxes, if you're counting it by dollars paid in, which is how they've made this argument. But it cut taxes for everyone. In fact, it cut taxes in reduction more for people in the middle and lower classes than it did at the top, but the dollar amount is higher for wealthy people, of course. Let's see. Individual provisions in the Trump tax cuts are set to expire next year, and the 2024 election will determine whether they are renewed, modified, or ditched altogether. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that extending the individual cuts will cost $3.3 trillion through 2035. You know how I feel about those words. Cutting taxes doesn't cost anything. Spending money costs something. If I mess up at my job and I make less money, or just somehow I didn't mess up, but just somehow I make less money, that didn't cost if I continue to buy way more things than I can actually afford. Then I'm always buying way more things than I can actually afford. And in fact, even if I lose money this year and I make less money, I get a reduction in my salary, and I'm like, you know what? I'm still going to spend more money next year, regardless of what's going on. That's not what costs. It's the spending the money that costs. All right. That's pretty obvious to me. I don't know about you guys. Number 3, got kind of a multi thing here. It's going to have to do with the WNBA. I know Costco posted this one in the group. I wouldn't have noticed this. I wouldn't have seen it if Costco wouldn't have put the context in there. So I do appreciate that. ESPN announces historic ratings for Fever Sun game. Historic ratings. Caitlin Clark's rookie season continues to be a ratings bonanza for the WNBA and all of its broadcast partners, especially ESPN. According to the ESPN VP of Research, Flora Kelly, Monday's game between Clark's Indiana Fever and the Connecticut Sun, this must have been a really, really important game, right? Everyone was like, yeah, I know there's been other games, but this game between the Indiana Fever and the Connecticut Sun, that is the one I have to watch. It reached 1.56 million viewers, a 353% increase over last year's average. She noted that it peaked at 2.97 million viewers, making it the most viewed WNBA game in ESPN history. You see, she has fixed the WNBA. Now, I'm not denying that there's going to be more people that are watching the WNBA. There were a lot of eyes fixed on Caitlin Clark during the tournament, during the season. We all know about that. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to try to follow and keep up a little bit with how she's doing in the WNBA. This might have brought some more eyes to the league. I'm not denying that whatsoever. But this tweet from Flora Kelly says, last night's Sun Fever hit 1.56 million, which is up 353%. It peaked with 2.97 million viewers from 9 p.m. to 9:14 p.m. This is now the most viewed WNBA game ever on ESPN. So, here's the cool part. It peaked from 9 p.m. to 9:14 p.m. Do you know what else happened around 9 p.m.? There was an NHL playoff game that was supposed to be starting on ESPN at that time at 9 p.m. The WNBA game ran long, and they continued coverage of the WNBA game. And so a bunch of hockey fans looking to watch the NHL playoff games turned on ESPN at 9 p.m. when the game was supposed to start, and they sat there painstakingly. It was the hockey suffrage movement. They were just spending all of this time watching people try to play a sport as hard as they could until the game was over and the NHL game started. That's why it peaked at that many people. And everyone knows this. This is like the first comment on this lady's post. Like everyone's like, yeah, all of these people from another league were coming to watch a playoff game for the NHL at 9 p.m. And you guys kept covering the WNBA game. Of course, it had peak viewership. It had the 100,000 people that were watching the WNBA game and then all the people that came in to watch the NHL game. Okay? It's pretty obvious. Okay, I'm being a little bit sarcastic there. I'm sure there were more than 100,000 people that were watching that game. The sad part about this is that this is what they have to resort to. And this could be a tactic. This could have been scheduled in a way that they knew people were going to be coming in at 9 to watch the NHL game. And they knew that this was going to happen. And so now they can talk about the higher ratings for the WNBA, or maybe they forced some people to expose themselves to this thing that was happening on a basketball court. So called WNBA. Maybe that's part of their tactic. I don't know. In that light, it's not a bad business move. Really not a bad business move. What's sad is when people come out and then they talk about it like there's been some monumental shift in this massive win that we knew was going to happen that's finally occurred in the WNBA. And you know darn well that it was people tuning in to watch the NHL playoffs. You know that. Come on. All right, the next thing, this is still Dumb Bleep number 3, by the way, and I guess we're just going to call it WNBA, but now we're going to bring in a clip from The View that I just ran across when I came in this morning. And they're talking about Caitlin Clark and why she's so popular. You can imagine what the people on The View came up with for why people are watching her when they didn't used to watch the WNBA.
LGBTQ plus community, 70% of the WNBA.
Let's back this up. This is Fox News' player. It's terrible. Okay, here we go.
There is a thing called pretty privilege. There is a thing called white privilege. There is a thing called tall privilege. And we have to acknowledge that. And so the part of it is about race, because if you think about the Brittany Griners of the world, why did she have to go to play in Russia?
Because they wouldn't pay her.
Because they wouldn't pay her.
Because they wouldn't pay, not because she was black, but because they didn't believe in the WNBA.
This is part of my point. So now, Caitlin Clark is bringing this money, these sponsorships, we hope, into the league, and other players will benefit from it. But I do think that she is more relatable to more people because she's white, because she's attractive. And unfortunately, there still is that stigma against the LGBTQ plus community. 70% of the WNBA is black. A third of the players are in the LGBTQ plus community. And we have to do something about that stigma.
All right, so if you're not keeping up with this, just so you know, people haven't been watching the WNBA because it's black and gay. And so that's why people aren't watching. Brittany Griner, by the way, she said, well, why was she playing in Russia in the first place? Well, because they wouldn't pay her. Yeah, that's because she's not worth any money because no one watches her play basketball. So she went somewhere else to play basketball to subsidize her income, I guess. And by the way, she was important enough that they traded the war criminal for her when she got arrested for having drugs on her in Russia. So that's a pretty big deal. We got other people that are still in prison that haven't been traded for various other war criminals that we have. So, that should count for something. But the idea that, well, no one watches the WNBA because it's black and gay. Why do people, talking about because she's white? Because she's white? I'm not even going to mention the gay thing because I don't see anyone banging out there in the court anyway, and no one really knows who these players are, so I don't think that has anything to do with it. Let's stick on the because she's white, that's why people are watching. Okay, why do people watch the NBA? Seems to be a lot of black people out there in the NBA. Okay, and they seem to get a lot more ratings and bring in a whole lot more money than the WNBA does. So I kind of think this is a dumb reason. Okay, really dumb reason. Okay, that's all part of Dumb Bleep number 3. Just so you know, Fox News player is terrible. Let me get away from this. Okay, Dumb Bleep number 4. I got to throw in Ron DeSantis. Okay, and making freedom-loving people look bad. And this is not a big deal, but I don't like what it's called, and I don't like the rules either. And no matter what you think about LG, B's and T's and all the Q's and stuff, plus, I don't really think that it's the job of the state government to make any kind of rules like calling something Freedom Summer. They're having Freedom Summer, okay? So they're going to have some tax cuts and stuff like that, tax-free weekends and all that, which I love when they admit that you don't have freedom, but we're going to have Freedom Summer where we don't steal as much from you. That's great. Okay. But as part of what Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is calling Freedom Summer, his transportation department has told cities across the state that if they want to light up their bridges at night, they can only use the colors red, white, and blue. The order, which was shared by Florida Department of Transportation Secretary Jared Perdue on social media, means that bridges across the state that normally illuminate in colorful arrays of light to mark holidays or awareness events won't be able to use any other colors from May 27th through September 2nd. Now, if you've been wanting to get back at the Pride Month celebrations and you secretly have like a vendetta and you just feel good kind of sticking it to people, although not in the way that they feel good sticking it to people, but you guys understand what I mean, then you have a Freedom Summer and you cover the whole month of Pride Month and, of course, the month with the Independence Day and all that in it, and you say, you can't light up your bridges with anything other than red, white, and blue. I get it. That's patriotic. That's patriotic as hell, okay? Is it? Is it patriotic to tell them that they can't use any other colors other than your national flag colors? That's almost not patriotic, if you ask me. Okay. Quote, as Floridians prepare for Freedom Summer, Florida's bridges will follow suit, illuminating in red, white, and blue for Memorial Day through Labor Day. Purdue wrote on X. Thanks to the leadership of Governor Ron DeSantis, Florida continues to be the freest state in the nation. A number of bridges across the state prominently display rainbow colors in honor of Pride Month in June. I know all about these rainbow bridges. Nashville has that bridge on Korean veterans. That bridge, it's, beautiful, beautiful bridge, great views of the city. super, super gay during Pride Month. It's just colors, though, okay? It's just rainbow colors. Let's get over it. Is it really worth issuing these diktats from on high that you can only use? This sounds like, honestly, it sounds like something that would come through in China or Russia, right? Back in the old days, that you could only use these colors. You can only use red, commie red. That's all you can use. Also, it's the cheapest paint color. It's one of the reasons they use it, but whatever. Okay, we'll move on to, that was number 4. We'll move on to number 5. Number 5, Bidenomics. Got kind of 2 separate things. There's an article from The Atlantic, and then there's also this tweet from the White House that we talked about on Tuesday that needs to be in Dumb Bleep of the Week. As most of you have heard, no doubt by now, Target has announced that they are lowering prices on 5,000 items ahead of Memorial Day weekend. And they're going to keep these lower prices for a bit. Hey, even my wife went and spent a bunch of time at Target after she read the news. She was going to do that anyway, but I guess that was maybe the excuse. So the reason they're doing this is because Target is losing market share to Walmart. Normally, Target has a little bit higher income customer, and Walmart has the lower income customer. Well, Walmart is now keeping the lower income customer, and they're also starting to grab some of the higher income customers as well from Walmart. And Target's not looking good right now. In fact, they had their earnings. They got crushed. It's not good. All right. They need to try and regain some market share. And what they found is that consumers are not feeling too great right now. They're strapped for cash. You know, one of the reasons is because their wages have gone down, technically. Not everyone. Some people's wages have gone up. I get it. But on average, the median at least, and the average, the wages have gone down. But after Target announces this, the White House comes out and they take credit for it. But not in the way they should have taken credit for it, which is by creating a terrible economy where people's real wages are actually going down. And so these stores need to lower their prices down to something that people can't afford. That's the way they should have taken credit for this. Instead, they say President Biden called on grocery chains making record profits to lower prices for consumers, and they're answering the call. Yes, when I think of grocery chain, I think of Target. POTUS is calling on other big corporations to join these leaders and lower grocery prices to give families more breathing room. That is right. President Biden gave enough speeches that eventually Target gave in. And maybe that was the strategy all along. Make us listen to him talk so many times, so terribly, so old, and so incoherently. And that was actually the torture tactic, and eventually Target gave in. They said, you know what? If this guy gives one more speech addressing us in any way, we give up. We're done. We're just going to kill ourselves. We're just going to leave this earth. And so they gave in. And so good job, President Biden. You gave a speech and they decided to lower their prices, or people's real wages have been going down and Target is losing some of their customers to cheaper competitors. And it's not actually a good sign at all. Okay, that's the first block of Dumb for Dumb Bleep of the Week. We got a whole lot more stuff coming up, including the most recent Trump hoax and the Tucker hoax, all that kind of stuff. Remember, you can find Good Morning Liberty, our daily podcast, on your favorite podcast app. But right now, we are Liberty at Night on the Free Talk Live Network. We'll talk to you very, very soon.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
The latest episode of Free Talk Live continues with Hour 3 up next after the news here at listen.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. The defense and prosecution have been wrapping up their closing arguments in Donald Trump's hush money trial. The former president's attorney, Todd Blanche, said the prosecution's star witness, Michael Cohen, told lies, pure and simple. Cohen alleged he made hush money payments on Trump's orders to an adult film star to cover up an affair. So FSN's Sally Patterson is outside the courthouse where the trial is taking place in Manhattan.
What we've been hearing from the defense so far is a very strong denial that Donald Trump, the former president of the United States, has done anything wrong. When he took to the floor earlier on Tuesday, we heard very strong words indeed from Trump's lawyer, Todd Blanche, and he said Donald Trump is innocent. He said that really everything that the prosecution has put on the table so far is a form of election interference. Now, of particular note was Michael Cohen's testimony. He's a key witness in this case. His testimony took place over several days in this trial. And what Trump's team has really been trying to do is undermine that testimony.
Around 24 people have died in extreme weather events across the United States. Hail, tornadoes, and high winds have devastated large areas of Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Kentucky. 200 people have reportedly been killed following an airstrike on Rafah over the weekend. Those are the updated figures from the UN's aid agency, UNRWA. The UN Secretary-General has condemned in the strongest terms the attack, saying he's heartbroken by the images of the killed and injured. FSN's Jody Jacobs reports from UN headquarters in New York.
Antonio Guterres says the fighting in Gaza must stop immediately. In a statement released on Tuesday, the Secretary-General says recent orders of the International Court of Justice are binding and must be complied with. The UN's aid agency, UNRWA, says the situation on the ground following Sunday's attack is extremely devastating, with its head Philip Lazzarini describing it as an endless horror show.
Meanwhile, a temporary pier constructed by the US military off the coast of Gaza to deliver humanitarian aid has broken apart as a result of poor weather conditions. FSN's Ara Spitzer reports.
American officials said a part of the floating pier had broken off, making it temporarily unusable. It comes barely a week after the $320 million project began operating. Before that, heavy seas had delayed the launch of the pier for several weeks. Last week, the U.S. said the pier had already been used to deliver 820 metric tons of food and other supplies to a beach in Gaza to then be distributed by the United Nations. There's been no update on when the pier may become operational again.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks with an update today on South Africa's election. It takes place on Wednesday and sees the ruling African National Congress, the party of the late Nelson Mandela, under enormous political pressure and facing its first real political threat since the apartheid era ended. It is not clear that the ANC will secure more than 50% of the vote and win an outright parliamentary majority. Beleaguered by accusations of corruption and incompetence, it's being challenged by an array of opposition forces. Bob McMahon is with America's Council on Foreign Relations.
A lot of ANC watchers have seen a definite diminution of support. This is obviously the dominant post-apartheid party going back 30 years. But, I mean, just the violent crime issue, South Africa is up there with some of the worst countries in terms of deaths per 100,000 of population. But also there's a kind of a raggedness in the country that people have become accustomed to in terms of outages because electricity has become a real problem and all sorts of infrastructure problems. And so this hurts the ANC, but the ANC is still seen as likely going to squeak by. And that means another final term for current President Cyril Ramaphosa.
But he may need to go into some kind of coalition with at least one opposition party, an outcome Ramaphosa is hoping to avoid, but the electorate may have other plans. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the main news again, the defence and prosecution are laying out their closing arguments at Donald Trump's hush money trial. Around 24 people have died in extreme weather events across the United States. The UN says that 200 people were killed in airstrikes in Rafah over the weekend in Gaza. It comes as a temporary pier constructed by the US to deliver aid into Gaza has broken apart in poor weather conditions. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
It's the Onion Radio News. A crazy man announces plans to stand in a doorway and yell at cars. This is Doyle Redland reporting. Dennis Fife, an Alhambra, California crazy man, held a press conference today to announce his intention to stand in the doorway of the office building at 2600 Kenilworth Avenue and yell at cars all day.
At approximately 9:30 a.m. on the day in question, shortly after I finish lunging at dogs, I will proceed to the front steps of the Simmons building and yell loudly for 9 hours. The screaming will be broken by a 15-minute fit of rigid catatonia, most likely in the late afternoon.
Among the topics Fife plans to address during his 9-hour rant, the ace of diamonds, bookshelves, the man trying to kill him, plastic bags in trees, Trapper John M.D., and papers everywhere. Doyle Redland for the Onion Radio News, online at theonion.com.
This is the Onion News Network.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. What's up? This is another fantastic episode of Liberty at Night with Nate and Charlie. Y'all know that. My name is Nate, and we are smack dab in the middle of Dumb Bleep of the Week, where the live group will vote on the dumbest thing that happened in the last week. Let's continue on. Continuing with number 5, Annie Lowrey from The Atlantic. Annie Lowrey from The Atlantic says, I try to answer the question, how is Joe Biden losing the election with an economy like this? And the headline here is, voters don't care about the economy as much as they think they do. You see, voters say they care about the economy, but actually, the economy is great. And so therefore, you don't actually care about the economy at all. You're just lying about that, because you're doing better than ever. Just look at the numbers. You know, those numbers, yeah, they're way better. Joe Biden is, at the moment, losing his re-election campaign, and he is doing so while presiding over the strongest economy the United States has ever experienced. The jobless rate is below 4%, as it has been for nearly 2.5 years. Wage growth is moderating, but it is higher than it was at any point during the Obama administration. That's just literally not true. It's overall, Biden has overseen stronger pay increases. Biden has overseen stronger pay increases than any president since Richard Nixon. Inflation has cooled off considerably, meaning that consumers' purchasing power is strong. Yet Biden's approval rating is below 40%. His disapproval rating is 56%. Donald Trump is beating him handedly in the most key swing states, and there's a chance that Trump might edge out Biden in the popular vote, particularly if he continues to expand his popularity with Black and Latino voters in blue and purple states. She's literally taken the data over the last, let's just say the last year.
the data over the last year. Wage growth has been strong during that time. The problem is this was preceded by historic inflation, 40-year high inflation. And in fact, if you calculated it the way that inflation was calculated 40 years ago, then it would have been all-time high inflation. Like since the creation of the Federal Reserve, the highest inflation we've ever had. If you calculated it the way it was calculated back in the 70s, which is where we were rivaling with our inflation numbers. Okay. So when you talk about wage growth is stronger, higher than at any point during the Obama administration. You have to be taking data from the last year, or you have to be not looking at real wage growth and just be looking at wage growth, not accounting for inflation. So that, I don't know if you know anything about the Atlantic's articles, but they are long and drawn out and detailed. And all of this is just based on a bunch of lies and cherry-picked statistics. And the argument is that voters don't actually care about the economy, or they're just uneducated when it comes to the economy. And this is actually your fault. And you're lying about the things that you care about. Because the thing that you say you care the most about, Joe Biden, is just crushing it. No matter how you feel. No matter what your real wages have done during this time. The problem's on you. They also had that article that said inflation is your fault and all that. You know, the Atlantic is, they also are the ones that called for the pandemic amnesty and all that kind of stuff. So the Atlantic, you know, great publication, really great stuff. This is the chart that we used on Tuesday. I just left it in the stack. Employed full-time, median usual weekly earnings, wage and salary workers, everyone 16 years and over. That has decreased by 2% since Biden came into office. It went up by about 4%. These are real wages, so inflation is taken into account. They increased by about 4% while Trump is in office, has decreased by about 2% since Biden came into office. Right now, wages are no more higher than they were. They are no higher than they were in 2019. Real wages, accounting for inflation. So what is she talking about? She's talking about from the time that this bottoming out happens and the decrease in the wages, and it starts moving up. And this wage growth, that's the fastest. That's faster than it was any time during the Obama administration. The problem is all the other stuff that happened before it. And people remember that because we are all living our lives and each day compounds against the one previous. And we remember our own history. We remember the things that we had to go through over the last few years. And we remember that things were easier for us 4 years ago, 5 years ago. I don't want to get into COVID territory there. So I don't know what year that would put me in, but 2019. If we just would have known, someone should have came to us in 2019 and said, hey man, take this in, relish this opportunity. Just really appreciate where you're at right now, because apparently it's all downhill from here. And 2019 is like the peak so far. I'm not saying it's not going to get any better. Okay, we're just going through a rough patch. Everyone calm down. Number 6, the Michael Brown situation, something else we also talked about on Tuesday, but needs to be included in Dumb Bleep. On the birthday of Michael Brown, that's Mr. Hands Up, Don't Shoot, which is something that didn't happen. All these Congress people, NAACP, activists, they all take to X and they talk about how this is Michael Brown's birthday and how he was murdered by a white police officer and justice was never served. And we live in a terrible racist society. And this is something that black people have to deal with every single day when they're walking down the street. Like Biden told college graduates last weekend at a commencement ceremony. And so we get this Michael Brown thing. Congresswoman Cori Bush says Michael Brown should be turning 28 today, but his life was taken by a Ferguson police officer. You also have stuff like the NAACP saying Michael Brown should be celebrating his 28th birthday today. We will continue to say his name and fight for justice and accountability, sending love to his family and friends. One of the things in that Cori Bush video was she said that in a just world, Michael Brown would still be celebrating his birthday today. That is a asinine statement. I'll just say that. It's a completely ridiculous statement. He was a suspect. I assume that we proved that he did rob the convenience store. Was a suspect, robbed the convenience store. Police saw him walking down the street, pulled up to him while he was walking down the street, he then proceeded to attack the police officer inside his car, try to get the gun from the police officer while he was still buckled in his SUV, and he got shot while he was in the SUV. He ran away. The police officer got out of the car. Michael Brown then turned back around and charged at the police officer. Big dude. Okay, big dude. And the officer, Darren Wilson, took him down. Okay. So in a just world, he should have been able to rob a convenience store and get away with it. That's what would happen in the just world. You know, we just can't have this kind of society, folks. Just can't have it. Number 7, just a quickie here for you. This is the way of the world right now, I guess. AMC hits Goodfellas. I don't know if y'all have seen Goodfellas. It's a great movie, okay? Don't watch it with your kids. It's too violent and it's too racist, I guess. Whatever it is. But, I mean, you got Robert De Niro, you got Ray Liotta, R.I.P., Joe Pesci. It's good stuff, okay? AMC hits Goodfellas with a trigger warning over stereotypes and lack of inclusion and tolerance. The warning says this film includes language and/or cultural stereotypes that are inconsistent with today's standards of inclusion and tolerance and may offend some viewers. Do we really need to put that warning on the movie Goodfellas? Now, notice they didn't say also a lot of people die. A whole bunch of people get murdered. And with today's standards, we just don't agree with all that mafia murder going on, But back in that day, that was totally fine. And we just want to give you a warning that by today's standards, we don't agree with just randomly killing people, to get back. It's just not our thing. Okay. But, back in your parents' day, that was something you could do. Okay. It's a movie. It's a movie. It's a movie about some bad folks. Okay. Maybe they did bad things and they were bad dudes. Corn Pop's one of the stars. Okay. Maybe they said some racist words. I don't know. Called someone a wop or something. I don't know what all kinds of words they used in this thing, but it wasn't good. Also, running around murdering people, not a good thing either. We don't need to warn against that, though. Okay. I just wanted to spend a second on that. Goodfellas is a great movie. I think that's a Martin Scorsese movie. I'm pretty sure. A lot of good ones out there. I don't know about you guys. I don't know if anyone out here, anyone in the group watches stuff like this whatsoever, but it's a good movie. I prefer the movie Casino. That's like my favorite movie from that era. It's one of my favorites, actually. That's one that I'll watch anytime it's on. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. That's one of my all-time favorites. Good movie. Okay. Number 8, now we're going to get into the hoaxes that occurred this week. It was a week of hoaxes. Is that what's the plural form of hoax? Hoaxes? Hoaxi. All right. Number 8 goes to this Tucker Carlson thing, which from what I can tell is something that was made up by Newsweek and then picked up by all of the talking heads everywhere. The story goes something like this. Pretty easy. Tucker Carlson launches show on Russian state TV. Now that, I will agree with you. I wouldn't agree with such thing. In fact, when I saw this headline, I was like, why would you do that, Tucker? That is so stupid. That is so dumb. After all the talk about you being a Russian asset and all that, you just come right out and you just show everyone that they were right. I mean, imagine what everyone's going to be saying. It turns out it's not true. That's the thing. But that didn't stop people like Joe Walsh saying things like, so Tucker Carlson went from Fox News to Russian state TV in just over a year. Wow, what a leap. Or maybe it isn't such a huge leap at all. Of course, this all plays into the idea that if you're against our involvement with Ukraine, if you think that somehow Ukraine or NATO provoked Russia to invade Ukraine, if you go and you interview the leader of a country that people have blacklisted and you cannot talk to, you must be a Russian asset. If you say that Russia didn't blow up the Nord Stream pipeline, something like that, you must be a Russian asset of some kind. And keep in mind, everyone, the craziest part about this whole Russia thing is this really all stemmed from the 2016 election. and the lies about Trump being a Russian asset and Russia stealing the election on behalf of Donald Trump. This whole, I get it. Russia is a bad country. I don't like them. I mean, seriously, guys, if we had Russia as our government, you think we wouldn't have a show called Good Morning Liberty where we talked about all the stupid, crazy, tyrannical stuff they did? Actually, we wouldn't, because they wouldn't allow us to have one. They'd probably put us in prison. It's a much worse place than the United States. It's not close. It's a bad country. And as libertarians, and even as Republicans and conservatives, you shouldn't support Russia, all right? But this anti-Russia hysteria was born from the Trump winning the 2016 election. You see, it was Hillary Clinton's time. It was her time. The stars had aligned. It was finally time for her to become the president. And Trump snuck in there and got that thing. And everyone's heads almost exploded. I'm not sure, but I think some people's heads did explode. I don't know. And so she comes in and she does this. She loses. He comes in and he must be a Russian plant. Turns out they swayed the election. Turns out that's the reason that he won. Turns out he's an illegitimate president. Turns out we've lost our democracy because Russia came in and did this. Turns out none of that was true also. But it has instilled this anti-Russia hysteria in the minds of millions and millions and millions of people. And millions of people. You know, when Russia took Crimea in 2014, did you see a lot of Ukraine flags and people's bios? Did you see people saying that we need to go in there, stop them? I'm sure some people did. I'm sure people were upset about it. But do we have this anti-Russia hysteria that came from that? No, didn't happen. This whole thing is happening because of the Russia hoax. That is why people freak out so much about Russia. It's all based on a lie. That's why it all drives me so insane. Otherwise, we'd just be talking about it like it were some other random country that wasn't really a threat to us. But the idea that they stole the 2016 election, and that's the reason that we have Trump, is the reason that people freak out so much about Russia. Okay, just wanted to clarify that point. So Joe Walsh says this, of course. Republicans against Trump says, breaking. Tucker Carlson has launched his own show on a Russian state television channel, Russian state newspaper. Russian words reported. Tucker Carlson is a Russian asset. Who else do we got here? Tristan Snell, one of my favorite liars on X, says, breaking. Tucker Carlson launches a show on Russian television. This is not a joke or a parody. Tucker Carlson is literally a paid Putin propagandist. Paid Putin propagandist. I like it. And then the actual news comes out. When you click on the Newsweek article now, the same post is up, of course. The same post with the same headline is up saying that he launched a new show on Russian TV. But now when you click on it, it says Tucker Carlson's show aired by Russian state TV. And then you click on the article, you see that this was updated. This article was updated to make clear there is no evidence the Tucker Carlson network has done a deal with Russian state TV. On the article that still exists. Now, what I would have preferred is that Newsweek do this research before they post it. But who cares? They got a bunch of engagement. They got a bunch of clicks. They sold a bunch of ad spaces on these articles, made some money from it. So who really cares? This whole there's no evidence thing, they could have reached out to Tucker Carlson or Tucker Carlson's people and gotten the comment from them. They could have reached out to the Russian state TV channel and gotten the comment from them. They could have waited. I feel like there was this thing back in the day that when you had a big story, like the former biggest news personality in America is now launching his own show on Russian state TV. There used to be this thing where you would try to confirm it first, and you would try to get comments from the people that were actually involved to confirm that it was a real thing, but not anymore. Now you just run with it. You get the clicks. You get the retweets, you get the narrative out there, and then you correct the article after the fact and say, there is no evidence that this article is true whatsoever. And then you change the article to just be the rebuttal that you now finally got comments from people. Now you got what the actual other side of the story is, but who's going to read that? No one reads the articles anyway. The actual original tweet with all the retweets is the thing that people are going to say. That's going to dictate the narrative in their heads. Nothing else matters after that. Okay. They now say that Tucker Carlson Network has rejected claims about this. What's actually happening is that there is a TV channel in Russia that is taking clips off of X and playing them on their own show. And Tucker Carlson or his people have come out and said that they're doing this illegally. They have no permission to do this. And there's not going to be any recourse whatsoever. What are they going to do about this? But there is now a TV channel that airs a show called Tucker, and they're basically playing Tucker clips on there. That's what's actually happening. It's not that he launched his own show. He's not working with the Russian government. He's not working with the TV channel. Okay? Tucker Carlson does shows that are distrusting of America. They're distrusting of our government. They paint America in a bad light, but not as bad as it deserves to be painted still. They question America, and they question our power structure and the people that are in power in our country. That's all it takes for you to have a winning Russian TV show right there. Doesn't mean that he's working with Russia or he loves Putin or he loves Russia. But they have a vested interest in showing a show that talks negatively about America, which is a lot of what Tucker Carlson does. So that's what's actually going on. Number 9, which is the last one here in the stack, goes to another hoax that occurred this week. 2 of them, actually. The last one was really the hoax. This is just, I would say, the fake news that happened. They're both hoaxes, okay? This is just going to be Trump hoax of the week, number 9. First part goes to the Trump floating the idea of a 3-term presidency. I'm using a tweet from our dear friend Joshua Reed Eckel, I guess is his name. And hey, Charlie's calling me right now. Let me see what's going on. Let me see. Hey, man, I'm doing the show right now. Yeah, I'm literally on the show and I'm recording us talking right now. Yeah. Just what do you want to say hi to everyone?
Hello, everyone.
You're sounding pretty good, man. Sounding pretty good. I don't know. You could have done the show.
I could have. I'm sorry I'm not there.
Oh, I'm sure. Everyone's saying hi. Let's see. Bailey's calling you a faker. She said this is just what you sound like, when you're calling in the work or whatever.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. You're doing a pretty good job.
Hey, I learned from the best.
Okay.
All right. Have fun.
How about I call you afterwards? All right. I figured that'd be a good one. What were we talking about here? Don't believe number 9. Josh Eckel posts out, Trump is now floating the idea of a 3-term presidency. His remarks from the NRA rally last night. Trump says, FDR 16 years, almost 16 years. He was 4 terms. I don't know. Are we going to be considered 3-term or 2-term? Crowd 3. Now, at first, when I read this, and even the first time I listened to it, I wasn't paying that much attention. I was like, he actually is floating 3 terms, isn't he? I don't like that. And I don't like that the crowd was involved in it. But then you look at the context of the speech that was happening. He was actually just insinuating that he won the election in 2020. That was actually what was going on. Okay. And so what he was saying is, if we win in 2024, or when we win in 24, are we considered 2-term or 3? Because we actually won in 2020. And even the people, to give them the benefit of the doubt, could have been saying, yeah, you won in 2020, so that's actually 3. And so we're chanting 3 right now because you were the winner in 2020, and this would actually be your 3rd time. Or they actually want him to be a 3-term president. I don't know. But this narrative, of course, went everywhere. All the news publications talking about it, all the same people, probably Republicans Against Trump, Lincoln Project, all of these folks out there, Joe Walsh, Josh Eckel, all the people. Here he is floating the 3-term presidency when actually you just have to listen to the clip. And what he was floating was that he won the election in 2020, which you can disagree with. You can disagree with him joking about that or floating that idea. You can disagree with that for sure. But he wasn't floating that he's actually going to stay in office for 3 terms. He was saying, I won in 2020, so this could be considered my 3rd term. Okay. The next part goes to the other Trump hoax that occurred this week. Unfortunate.
Here, the narrative goes something like this. Trump is now openly advocating for, quote, the creation of a unified Reich, or Reich, I'm just going to say Reich, whatever, in mock newspaper featured in campaign ad. We will continue dissecting this newest hoax right when we get back. It's not going to be very long at all. And then we're going to figure out who is the winner. And we'll play y'all our interview with the one and only Jeremy Kauffman. You probably know him, all right?
Do you ever say, I could care less, when you really mean the opposite? You mean to say, I couldn't care less. It's a common mistake. You are judged by how you speak, especially if you're looking for work, with so many more applicants than openings now. But even if you're not, avoiding common misstatements will help you make the most of the dozens of conversations and transactions that crowd your daily routine. So whatever you say, don't say whatever as a single word sentence. It's the most annoying expression in the American English language, according to a recent poll. And avoid cliches like the plague. Just kidding. But seriously, at the end of the day, you'll want to avoid this scenario, sounding like everyone else. For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. The defense and prosecution have been wrapping up their closing arguments in Donald Trump's hush money trial. The former president's attorney, Todd Blanche, said the prosecution's star witness, Michael Cohen, told lies, pure and simple. Cohen alleged he made hush money payments on Trump's orders to an adult film star to cover up an affair. So FSN's Sally Patterson is outside the courthouse where the trial is taking place in Manhattan.
What we've been hearing from the defense so far is a very strong denial that Donald Trump, the former president of the United States, has done anything wrong. When he took to the floor earlier on Tuesday, we heard very strong words indeed from Trump's lawyer, Todd Blanche, and he said Donald Trump is innocent. He said that really everything that the prosecution has put on the table so far is a form of election interference. Now, of particular note was Michael Cohen's testimony. He's a key witness in this case. His testimony took place over several days in this trial. And what Trump's team has really been trying to do is undermine that testimony.
Around 24 people have died in extreme weather events across the United States. Hail, tornadoes, and high winds have devastated large areas of Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Kentucky. 200 people have reportedly been killed following an airstrike on Rafah over the weekend. Those are the updated figures from the UN's aid agency, UNRWA. The UN Secretary-General has condemned in the strongest terms the attack, saying he's heartbroken by the images of the killed and injured. FSN's Jody Jacobs reports from UN headquarters in New York.
Antonio Guterres says the fighting in Gaza must stop immediately. In a statement released on Tuesday, the Secretary-General says recent orders of the International Court of Justice are binding and must be complied with. The UN's aid agency, UNRWA, says the situation on the ground following Sunday's attack is extremely devastating, with its head Philip Lazzarini describing it as an endless horror show.
Meanwhile, a temporary pier constructed by the US military off the coast of Gaza to deliver humanitarian aid has broken apart as a result of poor weather conditions. FSN's Ira Spitzer reports.
American officials said a part of the floating pier had broken off, making it temporarily unusable. It comes barely a week after the $320 million project began operating. Before that, heavy seas had delayed the launch of the pier for several weeks. Last week, the U.S. said the pier had already been used to deliver 820 metric tons of food and other supplies to a beach in Gaza to then be distributed by the United Nations. There's been no update on when the pier may become operational again.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
All right, what's up, everyone? We are back, Liberty at Night with Nate and Charlie on the Free Talk Live network. We're almost done with Dumb Bleep of the Week. We're currently talking about this newest Trump hoax with that Unified Reich newspaper. People have been hunting down Republicans and asking them to condemn Trump's use of this language. And here's the actual ad.
What happens after Donald Trump wins? What's for America? The economy booms. American energy is unleashed and an end to crushing taxes. The border is closed and the largest deportation in history is underway. No more wars as we focus on home. Law and order is restored. The American dream is back and the best is yet to come. Make America great again.
So there's the ad. Just terrible, bone-chilling ad, just brings you right back to the Nazi times, of course. Now, in this ad, there were fake news headlines, not fake news headlines, probably actual previous news headlines. This is a fake newspaper. This is sold through a company that's called Envato Elements. Found the actual sales page yesterday. And what they do is they sell you templates that you can change up. If you want to make this kind of an advertisement, then you can put your own headlines in this newspaper. And that's what these people did. Costs you about $40 to get this template if you pay for 1 month. Or if you want to buy a whole year of subscriptions to get things from Envato, you can pay $20 a month. Okay. So that's what happened here. Now, what I'm not fully aware of is whether or not you can change everything that's on the newspaper, because I didn't want to spend $40 to find this out. If you can change everything that's on the newspaper, or if you can only change the headlines, those big headlines that are in there. I don't know which one it is. But you hear people saying Trump is echoing Hitler, predicting a unified right if he wins. Now, the newspaper headlines themselves all had to do with World War I. This was a newspaper that was all about news headlines about the end of World War I. It had nothing to do with World War II. Any of this newspaper, it was all World War I. So they're not talking about the Third Reich. They're not talking about Nazi Germany. They're not talking about Hitler. The word Reich in German means empire or the country or the realm. Basically means the word empire, or what we would say country, or whatever it is that your ruler would call the area that they rule over. That's what it means. So a unified empire or a unified realm or a unified country, whatever it is. Okay. Biden-Harris HQ comes out talking about Trump's pattern of praising and echoing Adolf Hitler. Donald Trump thinks Adolf Hitler did some good things, that neo-Nazis who chant Jews will not replace us are very fine people, and now dreams of a unified Reich if he wins. Now, I don't know about the quote where Trump says Hitler did some good things. Honestly, didn't look that one up. If he said Hitler did some good things, I'd like to see it. I'd like to see if there's any context, and I'd like to say that there's hardly ever any context that's ever existed where you could say Hitler did some good things. He did do one good thing, which is that he shot himself in the head. So he did some good things, sure. Sure, that's what he said, okay? They also put out that he said neo-Nazis are very fine people. Everyone listening to this podcast right now knows this has actually been one of the catalysts of why we have defended Trump so many times, because I can't take the lying. This very fine people lie gets me infuriated and frustrated to a level that really only gaslighting can get you infuriated and frustrated to a level, to that specific level. When you actually have a transcript of someone's words, and you're still able to lie about what someone said when you have a transcript and a video of someone's words where they say they're very fine people, and then they say, I'm not talking about the Nazis who should be condemned. And then you are still able to continue this lie that he said that Nazis were very fine people when you've actually got the transcript where he says, I'm not talking about the Nazis who should be condemned totally. Yeah. I'm getting, my heart rate's just going up and up right now. But people are still able to say this.
It's just a common thing that you can say, and it's all a lie. And then you say he dreams of a unified Reich if he wins. It's clearly obvious that this is some stock newspaper footage. The headlines on these articles were changed. The articles themselves, it looks like they were not changed. I don't know if that is a limitation of the actual theme itself that was purchased, but these are all already on this theme, okay? You can look it up on Envato Elements if you want to. Then you can see, yes, I went through and I saw where is the actual stock footage and where is the actual thing that was changed for Trump. It looks like you can change the headlines in some places. I don't think the actual article text itself has been changed. It said Cold War over on this one, but above it, it says causes of World War I. This one says causes of World War I. It says peace through strength. This one says people suffering. This one says no more forever war. This one says German industrial strength significantly increased after 1871, driven by the creation of a unified Reich. That was changed on this specific screenshot to say President Trump rejects globalist war-mongering, puts America first, issues, whatever. This one says history on newspaper. This is an advertisement for Envato Elements right now, okay? Here, once again, it says industrial strength significantly increased in 1871, driven by the creation of a unified Reich. They just put the same thing over because they're just building a theme for people to use. This one just says, what's next for America? And then it keeps the same article down here at the bottom that there was previously. This one says war ends. And it says German industrial strength significantly increased in 1871, driven by the creation of a unified Reich. Instead of war ends, it says MAGA. And then down here at the bottom, it says German industrial strength significantly increased in 1871, driven by the creation of a unified Reich. This is either sloppiness on the part of the people who made it, or it was a limitation in the actual theme itself where you couldn't change every single thing that was inside the theme at all times. Okay, that's what's actually happening right there. When things like this happen, you have to ask yourself, like, just say you're online and you're not super politically driven. You don't know that people lie about everything. You just see the story. You see that Trump put out a campaign ad that talks about a unified Reich. And you don't realize off the bat that they're talking about World War I Germany and not Nazi Germany anyway. Okay. I try to imagine what you would have to think, because what is the benefit? If you go with this is a Nazi dog whistle theory, which is what some people decide they want to go with, you got to ask yourself what the most likely scenario is in this case. One of the theories is the Nazi dog whistle. Then you got to ask yourself, what is the benefit of doing such a thing? Let's say that inside of the Trump campaign team and Trump himself, there was this unified approach to make sure you put out the perfect dog whistle to all the Nazis out there. You'd have to think that that's enough of a benefit to you that they're going to see it. And there's so many of them out there that are going to catch this little dog whistle that it's somehow going to let all of those Nazis know that are out there in America. Apparently, the millions upon millions of them know that you are their guy. You can't say it outright, but if you just watch closely on this ad, you see that I'm your guy. And then you have to take the opposite bet that no one else is going to notice it except for the Nazis that you're dog whistling to. But you're going to have enough of a benefit because you're going to dog whistle to enough Nazis that it's going to put you over the top in the election when you do this sort of thing. That has to be what you think is happening for you to go with the Nazi dog whistle theory. The other theory is someone got a stock newspaper footage thing and either couldn't change all of the words on it or just got lazy because the unified Reich thing was changed at one point in time on this when it was in a different position on the paper, a bigger headline on the paper. And then it wasn't changed in a couple other times on the paper. And that someone just got lazy, or that person that made the ad
was wanting to do a Nazi dog whistle. And they made this ad. Trump saw it, wasn't watching it in slow motion and reading every single side article headline, just saw these headlines that were popping up on the page, heard the words that were being said, thought it sounded like a good ad, and reposted the ad. There's other scenarios here. The question is, which one do you think is most likely? Which one do you think is most likely? For some people, it's that Trump is a neo-Nazi who took the risk of dog whistling to the other millions of Nazis that are out there in the country in an effort to push him over in the election by signaling to them that he's their guy. And that's dumb. Okay. All right, everyone. Let's get the votes in. Let's get the votes in. Go to the Dumb Bleep of the Week voting channel. Get your votes in. While people are voting, I'm going to tell you guys to go to GodHatesFeds.com. Get yourself a shirt. Okay? Get yourself a t-shirt. Says God Hates Feds on it. That's what they say. There's also other ones say Power Corrupts. There's one with an American flag that's made out of all of the initials of our letter alphabet agencies that we have. It says Land of the Free at the bottom. It's a ironic t-shirt, of course. Plenty of other shirts out there. Javier Milei shirts, Ron Paul shirts, stuff like that. Okay? So you want to go over to GodHatesFeds.com. You can go to joingml.com, joingml.com, to join the Fed Haters Club so you could be voting with your friends right now about what the dumbest thing this week was. You want to make sure you get your votes in because this dictates the direction of the show, and then we're going to do Dumb Bleep of the Year at the end of the year, and people are just finally going to know what the dumbest thing that happened the entire year. We're going to send them a trophy. They're not going to open it or show it to anyone, okay? But it's a symbolic gesture, of course, when we go through the Dumb Bleep of the Year tournament. I need someone to pull a vote from some of those options in the top. It is now between AMC Goodfellas and this week's Trump hoax. So you're going to have to pull your vote and put it somewhere else. I'm going to call it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's this week's Trump hoax. That's the one that gets it. All right, and now we're going to shift over to our interview with a guy some of you probably know, goes by the name of Jeremy Kauffman. I'm sitting down with the one and only Jeremy Kauffman, who had many titles. Executive Director of the Free State Project was a former title, and then Communications Director for LPNH. Was that right?
Still, I don't know if I'm technically the director, but I'm one of the people doing the LPNH comms. Yeah.
What do you think of the convention so far?
I think it's great. I always like being around libertarians. It's nice to be able to do that. I mean, look, I like libertarians so much I moved to New Hampshire for that reason. Yeah. It's like being like a gay man and going to San Francisco. You're like, oh my gosh, I can let my hair down. I can be myself. Like libertarians have to keep their mouth shut a little bit in a lot of places. Here you get to really be among your people, and you don't have to give the gentle, polite form of the argument. You can really unleash. You can see that for people here. People feel like, oh, I'm among my people. And I also think it's a nice place you can hash out. If you have had differences online or whatever, it's also nice to get together and be able to hash those things out. I would like the Libertarian Party to be a place where every libertarian feels like it's something that they should support. Even if you don't vote for the candidates, if you're a small L libertarian, I would like the Libertarian Party to become an entity where every small L libertarian feels like I should be supporting that. I think the number one thing that the party needs to do is making sure that it's aligned with those people. If the party is aligned with those people and helping those people achieve their goals, then I think the party is something that people will want to support.
Okay, now one of the big divides I've seen in the party has been along the lines of messaging. In fact, that's why I used to be a member of the party, and I dropped out in 2020 because I thought the Libertarian Party did a terrible job of messaging during 2020. You have taken that little idea I had, and some would say to the extreme of messaging for the Libertarian Party. What do you think the value of, is your messaging extreme? What is the value of that? And I wanted you to clear the air. I've read some bad things about you in the press. Are you different from what Newsweek might say you are, or whoever? What do you think?
Well, it's funny. Sometimes I feel like the libertarian publications give me worse treatment than a right-wing one. Look, you're sitting in front of a T-shirt that says "God hates feds," and I told you that I thought that was the funniest slogan I've seen here this weekend. And so we may have some messaging similarities in what we like and don't like. There are people who would like to dismiss me as being edgy or whatever, and I think that is basically people who do that because they don't want to engage with the actual ideas. Because anyone who pays attention to what I say, I will get in the facts, I will discuss the data, I will give you rational arguments, they're backed by studies, I will give you statistics. And so, this idea that we're not serious, we're the most serious, we have the most facts on our side, we just also have good memes. And then people but people who don't want to engage with the arguments point to and say, oh, that's offensive. And they use it as a way of shutting down conversations that they don't want to have because they don't like the answers. I think objectively, some of the stuff we've done has been divisive in the sense that people have complained about it. But I think there are very few people who could engage with us in the realm of actual ideas and in the realm of actual facts, right? And so, the New Hampshire people, we believe there are reasons the Libertarian Party has lost. We believe there are reasons that libertarians have lost nationally and will continue to lose. And we believe those aren't problems of having the right message or running the right campaign. We believe that that's because American people fundamentally do not believe in libertarian ideas. They don't hold them in their hearts. And this idea that you can persuade people to change their values, I think is a largely fake idea. How do you persuade someone that they like chocolate ice cream and not vanilla? I think this is almost impossible to do.
What do you do when there's no way to persuade people?
You collect the people who like vanilla, right? That's the point, right? So, or libertarians, I guess in this analogy, would be the people who like strawberry, right? So you've got chocolate and vanilla, and look, a lot of people like it more than strawberry, but that doesn't mean that strawberry likers shouldn't get to have their ice cream, And so that's the New Hampshire strategy. It says we actually don't need to persuade people. There's at least to become libertarians. There's already millions of libertarians. And I believe this is for all ideologies, by the way. I believe it's about communism. If there's several million of you ought to be able to, acquire some land and find some way to live in accordance with your values. And libertarians can't go anywhere in the world. You could have $1 billion. You could have several $1 billion. You're not going to be able to do it. So if we want to see a libertarian society, a libertarian polity, taking over a state, leveraging federalism, leveraging the Constitution, potentially seceding, that is the best path forward for libertarians. And it's working, right? We have a guy elected in New Hampshire who celebrated the Gabby Gifford shooting. He's one down. And he's he said, don't target people. But it's this guy's a congressman. Yeah. Of course this is a congressman who is violating your rights. If you're not how can you celebrate the American Revolution and the Pine Tree Riot and then get mad at, it may have been an insane person that shot Gabby Gifford, so I'm not necessarily encouraging it. But this guy gets elected. We have hardcore Rothbardian ANCAPs. A hardcore Rothbardian ANCAP is the House Majority Leader of New Hampshire. The House Majority Leader of the Republican Party is a Rothbardian who came out of Mises and the Hillsdale Institute. He's a great man named Jason Osborne. We are winning. We are getting actual power in New Hampshire, and we're showing that there is a means by which libertarians can win. Because if you get enough of that 5% of those strawberry lovers and you get them together, now you can win. And the other part of this that I think makes it work is, and this is kind of a chicken and egg problem, and it makes spreading libertarian ideas hard, 80% of people don't really have ideas. They're essentially agreeable people who kind of go along to get along. And so how do you make libertarianism, majority popular, mainstream? Well, you have enough of, you have enough density that it's in, it's sort of in the water, it's in the air, and then they, mindlessly repeat it the same way that people repeat the slogans they're taught in school,
So you're mentioning New Hampshire a lot, and so even though some stuff happened in the past, I suspect you haven't just decided to bolt out of New Hampshire or anything like that because you were part of the Free State Project.
I still am part of the Free State Project. I'm still a leader in the Free State movement. The Free State Project is not the Free State. It's 1% of what's going on. Okay. The Free State Project isn't directing state reps. The Free State Project is a handful of people who do marketing under the Free State Project. Free Staters market New Hampshire all kinds of ways. Right? LPNH markets New Hampshire. I market New Hampshire under my own name. Dennis Pratt runs the Independence Inn, markets the Independence Inn. Other people sell books and do all of these things. Ian Freeman with Free Talk Live and Mark Edge, all of these people. So there's a bunch of different brands and umbrellas under which the New Hampshire is being advanced.
Do you want to say hey to the Free Talk Live people? We have a show on Free Talk Live every Tuesday night. I love
the Free Talk Live people. I mean, I think what happened to Ian and Aria is an absolute tragedy. I'm very glad that Aria is now out. So she's been reunited with her dog, which is great. But I mean, Ian is I gave a short speech at this Enemies of the State Bash, which was celebrating Ian and Roger Ver and Ross and all of these heroes. And like, Ian really does, he is in that pantheon. I mean, he is the kind of guy who, that's what a hero is, right? A hero sacrifices to help the group. A hero is the person who runs into the burning building knowing that they might die, you know? And Ian is that kind of person. What he has, born to advance his ideas and to advance libertarianism, it's something that very, very few people in the world would be willing to do. Everyone should be celebrating and honoring him for what he has done.
He's a guy whose name needs to be mentioned when people are chanting about Ross and Snowden and Assange. I mean, Ian's the next guy I think about on that list.
Also, for the Libertarian Party, this is a guy who was a big supporter of the Libertarian Party. I mean, Ian's donated tens of thousands of dollars to the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. He's donated money to all kinds of other libertarian causes. So this guy is one of ours too. Like, not that that's a reason not to celebrate Assange or not to celebrate Snowden, but this guy was a committed member of the Libertarian Party.
Yeah.
So this is one of our guys who is now going to be in jail for what I think more than a decade.
I think that is it some of the negative press around what happened with that leads people to not put him on that.
I don't see how that's any different than Ross. I mean, Ross is the Silk Road is selling heroin or whatever. Like, libertarians believe that these kinds of things ought to be allowed. To me, Ross is someone who is improving the status quo. He is removing coercion and violence that's inherent, in the distribution of these things. And so I think, Ross, despite drug use being bad, is creating the Silk Road was a good thing, or at least certain kinds of drug use being bad. I think that's the same kind of thing, with Ian, like, especially because even more so than Ross, like, Ian was, I think, very clearly trying to follow the rules. And this is something I ran into, fortunately only civilly in my case, but it turns out that the rules aren't really real. Like, they're kind of real, but part of the way the rules work is they're designed to be interpretable so that, if we just think you're a bad guy, then you definitely broke them. And that's really what happened to Ian is he tried to dot the I's and cross the T's and follow the rules.
More so than banks even do, right?
Yeah. Right. And whereas Ross clearly knew he was breaking the law, Ian was really trying to follow the law, was trying to do it clearly, and because they want to crack down so much on these exchanging of Bitcoin into cash in ways that aren't going through the Coinbase or whatever, they want to crack down on it so much, and I think that's why he's now in jail. And we want that. You need to be exchanging. You do not want. It's one of the most annoying things that the government does. Actually, the whole know your customer and anti-money laundering are an example of this. But it's just as true if you run a tech company and you're supposed to moderate your service. The government requires all of these people to act as cops, and not acting as a cop actually means you broke the law. And so if you run a bank, you have to be a cop. If you run a video website, you have to be a cop. Like, if I don't do certain things proactively, become an agent of law enforcement on behalf of the United States government, send things to them, report things to them, then I'm the one breaking the law. It's a crazy system because now you're saying, I have to be a police officer. I have to go around and enforce laws that I don't agree with. I think that is a really bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, people should be free to send money however they want. The person that is facilitating that transaction should just make sure that that person is willingly sending the money. When it comes to money laundering or drugs or whatever, money laundering, well, taxation is theft, and drugs should be legal anyway. And so we shouldn't really, you should just be able to send money, and there's no reason someone should be in prison over this at all.
But the part of this, I guess, that maybe some people might not think about is because the incentives that this creates, okay, now the law says you have to be a cop. Well, now I'm a business owner and I don't want to get in trouble. So what do? I police zealously enough that if you ever come saying, well, I have to come and say, well, look, no, I was doing a good job trying to be a cop on your behalf. Like, I would track and make sure that we had records, like that we had, certain kinds of content or whatever were getting, deleted and moderated. To make sure that, like, hey, no, look, we're trying. These are actions. So if they ever came to us and said, well, why didn't you deal with this? Well, like, look, we just missed that one. We were clearly trying. Here's this record. So you end up wanting to. Some of the crappy things that banks do, not to be a wholesale. I'm sure to be a wholesale defender of them, but some of it is. They're doing this so that they have a record to be able to show that we tried to be a good cop government. And so a lot of the people can sometimes miss that the crappy behavior that we get from companies is still actually ultimately coming from the government.
Free Talk Live.
I mean, what I'm saying is that if you do something that could cause harm, you should be prosecuted for it.
Private Manning was prosecuted for it. Private Manning was in jail for 7 years. Private Manning was given a 35-year sentence, which is by far and away the largest sentence ever given to a person that was a whistleblower.
Not a whistleblower.
There's a video of a helicopter gunning down reporters. That's a war crime.
But ultimately, the people in the military are following the orders of thugs and liars and criminals in Washington, D.C., and as much information